It's that time of the week. Yes, this week's Cult Movie Show, your weekly look at cult movies. Please welcome your hosts, Warren and Velvet.
Yes! God, it's getting longer and longer every week. It is podcast 33 of the Cult Movie Show. Thank you for tuning in, or subscribing, I should say. You don't actually tune in these days. But this is, of course, the Cult Movie Show with myself, Warren, and, of course, sitting next to me in the internationally virtual studio, as always, is Velvet. How are you today, Velvet?
I'm doing quite fantastic, and it's going to be another crazy show, as it usually is lately. We've got a really awesome selection of films from all over the globe tonight, and we even have an international podcasting setup tonight because we got you, Warren, we got me, and we have our friend Mike that we got to know him because he directed a short film that we reviewed last week on podcast 32. This is the director and writer and actor of Plague of the Pot Rabbits. This is Mike Fullerton. Introduce yourself, Mike.
Yeah, my name is Mike Fullerton. I've been really interested in films for several years now, and Plague of the Pot Rabbits was my first finished and released film.
Awesome. Well, we loved it. We highly recommend it. So if you haven't seen it, you can go check out podcast 32. You can also go to the website, plagueofthepotrabbits.com. And Mike's actually going to hang out with us tonight and review movies with us. So I'm excited.
Oh, look, so am I. And just before we get started, Mike, I have to actually say I loved your little short film. I haven't laughed so much in quite a while. It was so much fun, and I really loved the little message. Well, obviously not the little message, quite a big message that was put in there. And it was a fantastic film. You know, congratulations.
Thank you. That's awesome to hear.
And so obviously, well, not obviously, for a lot of people that don't know the backstory behind this short, this was based on something that a DEA agent said that basically, hey, if they legalize cannabis, the wildlife are going to start eating cannabis and they're going to be high all the time. So what made you think, you know what, I'm going to make a short in which that does happen, but it's not going to have the effect they think it's going to have? Like, what motivated you to make this?
Yeah, so I think it was about January of last year. I was just on Facebook, you know, it was Sunday, I was just reading my feed, and one of my friends posted a link about this story about the DA agent and making fun of them, sort of thing. And I just laughed. I just couldn't stop laughing. It was the funniest thing. And I did a little bit of more research because I just thought it was so ridiculous. And there was all this stuff out there, like people were making fun of the agent, and there was all these jokes and memes and, you know, a lot of comments and that sort of things. So it just all came together, and I just had this idea, oh my God, I got to make a film about this. Because, you know, like I work with filmmakers here in the Okanagan, and they were asking me, "Hey, are you going to make a movie? Got a script?" And I just, this is the opportunity to do my first film, and it just all came together. And I just struggled to write it all down, and I had the script basically done, most of it done that day on Sunday.
Oh wow!
And, yeah, it was amazing. I mean, that rarely happens. And yeah, that's just I just had all these silly ideas of I guess I won't give anything away, but all these silly ideas.
Silly? Not at all. Yeah, so it's amazing where you can find inspiration. You just never know what will get your creative juices flowing. And I'm so glad you put it to not only to paper, but put it on film and put it out there for all of us to enjoy. And also spread your message, whether you agree with it or not. I think it's just, that's what I love about film as art as well as communication. It's universal and it has such wide reach. And even if nobody gets a message out of it, they at least get entertained. You know what I'm saying? So thank you for doing that. And we're happy to have you on the show with us today.
Absolutely, and we are going to continue this conversation, but we're just going to pause for a second while I run outside and tell someone to turn their fucking lawnmower off. So just everyone just bears with us for one quick moment. We're going to be right back. And we're back. Sorry about that. These things happen from time to time. Never mind. Lawn mowing seems to be over. So anyway, but we were obviously talking about Mike's film, and it's so good. I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm so glad that you made the decision to make it. I really am.
Yeah.
It was difficult, but yeah, I'm glad we got it done.
I loved your choice of the rabbits. I think that really just added such a nice comedic edge to it. I don't want to ruin it for people who haven't seen Plague of the Pot Rabbits, but yeah, get a load of those rabbits.
Yeah, so we had a lot of plans. We were going to use real, actual rabbits.
Oh, wow.
Just so difficult to...
Oh, totally.
Oh, man. We had a rabbit farm and everything, but it was just so difficult to work with them, and they're actually kind of vicious. They can actually do you some pretty good damage.
Yeah. Rabbits are not to be fucked with. We learned that in Night of the Lepus. And look at Monty Python and Search for the Holy Grail. Rabbits are cute and deadly. Don't let them fool you. So.
But I actually thought the use of the stuffed bunny rabbits, I
loved it.
I actually thought it worked better in many ways than using real ones.
I do too.
Yeah, because you can do a lot more things. How are you going to put fangs on an actual rabbit?
Although those fangs they got, like you said, can do a lot of damage.
No, so look, congratulations. It was, it was really good. Have you been getting sort of good responses from the film?
I've had a few reviews, and they've been mostly positive. They make a few jabs at the low budget aspect of it, but that's what you'd expect. But yeah, it's generally positive. But it is. I think it is it's only certain people get it, and
right.
It's kind of, yeah.
Well, cool. I won't give away the ending, but I really liked the ending. I really thought because you had all of this humor, but then you had a real message at the very end, and I really did like that. Actually, I thought that was very well done.
Totally.
Yeah, that's kind of what I always want to do. Whenever I make something, I want to have some kind of message to make you kind of think and, maybe make the world a better place somehow or whatever.
And I think that's a great thing. We need that at the moment. So, I think that's absolutely wonderful. Although in saying that, some of the movies we're going to be looking at this week maybe don't go down that path. Although it could be said that one definitely does. But we will get to that in time. So, should we have a look at our first movie for this week?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, sure. And this is an interesting one, I think is the best way to describe it. It is part, of course, of the Ozploitation movement, which we've talked about before. In fact, I think we had an Ozploitation... When was that, Velvet?
That was with when we had Irish Stewart on, and the creator of Legion of Rue, and we did Turkey Shoot, which I voted as one of the worst movies I've ever seen. We did, or no, that wasn't, or yeah, that was, we just did that one. And
yes, just that one. That's
that one.
That's.
And then we had an Australia episode. That's what I'm getting confused with. Excuse me, sorry about that.
So no, that's exactly right. So we have done an Ozploitation movie before, and we're going to do another one again today. And, this one is from 1980, although it was released in 1981, Pacific Banana, or Pacific Banana, as you guys say. And it was directed by John Lamond, who is an interesting character, is about the only words I can really think. Some might describe him as a sloth. Some might describe him as one of the most sexist bastards on the face of the planet. But
God.
he has made some quite iconic Australian films. Whether you like him or whether you hate him, there's no doubt that he's written himself into Australian film sort of cult status anyway. And Pacific Banana was just one of his offerings, and that's the one we're talking about tonight. Now, it starred Graham Blundell, Robin Stewart, who Robin Stewart, a lot of people will remember from Bless This House in Britain. Also, I think he was in a number of the Carry On films. Deborah Gray, Alison Best, and Helen Hemingway, all of whom were very, very, very well known in Australian cinema and Australian TV at the time. And a bit like many of the Ozploitation films, you wouldn't necessarily say this was the peak of their career by any means, but it's work, and you take it when you can get it. Now, the story basically revolves around an airline called Pacific Airlines, Banana Airlines, I should say, which flies old, out-of-date 1930s aircraft out to the South Pacific from Australia to take people to their holiday resort destinations. Now, it is the worst airline in human history, probably up there with Aeroflot or something along those lines, and they play on this very much. It's basically, I suppose, a sets comedy, a sets romp, if you like, very similar in nature to the Carry On films and things like that. And we follow our main character who, after having a bad sexual experience, let's say, is not really 100% a man anymore. How would you describe it, Velvet? He's
a few, he's a few sandwiches short of a picnic.
He can't get an erection. That's what we're talking about, okay?
I wanted you to say.
And anyway, so while on the island with all our other characters who are members of the airline and so forth, they try to help him out to solve his problem, and he gets into many different sort of situations and romps and so forth, while all the time being chased by a teenage girl who has fallen in love with him. What did everybody think?
This kind of movie is something I don't feel like they really make this specific genre anymore. This movie from the get-go is nothing but a comedy with lots of sexual innuendo, tons of nudity, and that's really all there is to it. But I like it. I thought it was really entertaining, really funny. Parents, put the kids to bed. If you're under 18 years of age, shame on you. Don't let your parents catch you watching this or listening to this episode, because definitely this is fun for adults. What did you think of this movie, Mike?
Well, it's kind of not my cup of tea. I would have loved this when I was younger, but yeah, there was certain parts of it that were quite funny. Yeah,
it was basically designed that after a series of films, also part of the Ozploitation movement, which were called the Elven Purple films, which also starred Graham Blundell, who's the star of this film. And it was sort of decided that they would take the concept of Elven Purple and create Australia's own group of Carry On films. Carry On Cabby, Carry On Matron. We've all seen Carry On films. And this was meant to be, well, the idea anyway was that this would be the first in a series of a whole ton of films. So we had, for instance, Pacific Banana. Then maybe the next movie might be, I don't know, Japanese Banana, and then they might do Brazilian Banana and all these other. And so the whole idea was that they were going to make a set of these banana films, which would be the Australian Carry On. But it never actually happened. The movie was not popular when it came out. It was not thought about as being a high point of cinema. The other thing too is that most of the funding came from the South Australian Film Corporation, which means that this film was taxpayer funded. Okay.
Oh my God! That is crazy.
But
they made a sex movie with tax dollars.
Oh yes. Well, mind you, it's not the first time they've done it, but it wasn't actually the sets in it that actually made people upset in Australia. It was the fact that they filmed half of the movie in Tahiti, and the problem was they said, why are you spending Australian taxpayers' dollars overseas? They didn't have a problem with the nudity.
That's hilarious. Yeah, this movie is like boobs every 5 seconds. I don't know. I, as always, didn't do any homework going in, just sat down, watched the movie, do my homework after, and I was just like, oh my God, is this all this movie is? But it made me laugh, because first off, okay, all the women in this movie are like insatiable. Like, women are just like nymphomaniacs that will have sex with random strangers at any moment they can, and in the most uncomfortable fucking places.
Yes.
I thought it was hilarious, though. I was just like, and plus, okay, our fucking main guy here, this poor Martin guy. First off, this guy's a goofy looking guy. And even him, like, women are throwing themselves at him. And he's just kind of sweet, goofy, dorky looking guy. And every time he gets aroused, he sneezes and his banana goes south. He's got a lazy banana, as they say in the theme song. And I'm just like, this is so weird. Then I start anticipating it. I'm like, oh God, is he going to sneeze? Oh, here it comes. And I love how they like use a windsock for symbolism. Like every time he loses his stiffy and it goes soft, you see the windsock just go down. But yeah, it's this movie's full of sexual innuendo. All the women are nymphomaniacs. They had the editing in this movie, I have to admit, is really sloppy. All the scenes are really rammed together so fast sometimes that there's no transition between scenes. So for half a second, you're kind of like, wait, what? Oh, okay. Like, takes you a second to get oriented. Like, what's going on? Who's that? What's happening? Oh, okay. Like,
It is. Look, it is. It was definitely a cheap film. There's, I mean, it'd be hard to find an Ozploitation film that was made with a big budget. These were made quickly. The idea, like all exploitation cinema, whether it'd be from Italy, whether it be, all the exploitation movies, the blaxploitation movies, the American exploitation movies from the Philippines. I mean, these were designed just to turn a quick buck. It was, they weren't meant to be high art, by any means. But the thing about them, which I think is so different about Ozploitation movies to other exploitation movies around the world, is that the actors who were in them were actually all very well known. I mean, you could turn on your television and see these actors in soap operas at 7:00 at night, and then suddenly they were in these running around naked in these romp films. So it was a little bit different, I suppose, to some of the other exploitation sort of genres that were out there. It was interesting though you talked about the theme song, because Deborah Gray, who is one of the girlfriends, the blonde girlfriend in this, she actually wrote the theme song when they were on the island. And it's actually her singing it too.
Oh, so, wow.
Yeah.
I love the lyrics on there. You got a lazy Pacific banana. It wants to go up, up, and it comes down, down. The soundtrack on this movie cracked me up, because aside from the theme song, the rest of the soundtrack was kind of like Benny Hill. It was always just kind of like this carnival, fast, sped up like sounds. When I was like, I don't know, that just made me laugh too.
Well, that's the whole idea. They very much base this on, Benny Hill, Carry On. It's very much copied off that. It's just that because it's Australian, there's a shit more nudity in it, but it's very much based on that British style of, I suppose, what's often referred to as sort of working class humour. So it's, I mean, I don't think it's a bad film, but it's definitely now written itself into sort of cult status. But yeah, it is cheap, but it is fun. It is.
Well, Mike obviously doesn't have much to say about this film. He already said it's not his cup of tea. So what do you think about the acting in this film, Mike? Well, I mean, were you convinced of these characters? Did you think the acting was bad? Like, what did you think?
I mean, the acting seemed fine. Like, it was okay. It was just, the story wasn't much a story to it. I mean, you don't expect that in a film like this. There was a couple of things I really, really liked. I found funny, like the way they portrayed some of the men, like they're so kind of uptight, or what would you say, like repressed.
Mm-hmm.
And the weird, creepy way they're attracted to women. I thought that was quite funny. I'm not sure if they meant that too, but yeah.
What do you think of Paul having 2 fiancées? I mean, come on, isn't that every guy's dream? You have 2 girls.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'll take 2 fiancés over 1 any day. Come on now.
But that's the interesting thing too, because as the movie goes on, and it is kind of interesting too that it plays with this idea of sexism, even though it is a totally sexist film, because it of course it's totally sexist. It's 1980. It's but the whole idea is that he is using all of the women. This is the pilot played by Robin Stewart. And so he's got 2 fiancées. He's cheating on them with just about every woman he ever meets. But then basically towards the end, the roles reverse. And and what do they say? He is now their bitch. You know,
and he even turns it on them and calls them, you know, how women are always saying, "Oh, you're a male chauvinist pig." He actually calls them female chauvinist sows.
Yes, I know. I know it was. But the other thing too is that Helen Hemingway, of course, plays the schoolgirl who's meant to be chased. Now, okay, first of all, the whole idea that if she's a schoolgirl, that means she's got to be under 18, okay? Which sort of sends a bit of a spooky vibe in the first place.
Right.
But I suppose it's sort of counterbalanced by the fact that I think she was 32 when she played this role.
But later in the movie, she does specifically say, "I'm 18 and I'm done with school. I've outgrown it." So, I mean, essentially she's saying she doesn't want to continue school. She doesn't want to go into college. She wants to get her freak on with this goofy-looking pilot who can't keep it up. But, no, I actually did like the ending of this movie. I'm going to ruin it for everybody. Basically, our pilot is able to cure his little erection problem because he was looking for love. He wasn't looking for sex. He was looking for a meaningful relationship. And everyone else in this movie is all about, you know, swinging and, you know, alternative lifestyles and just casual sex and just sex for the sake of pleasure. Whereas he actually wanted to connect with someone on an emotional level. And I was like, wow, I wouldn't think you would get that kind of message out of this movie. And they slipped it in there.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy that for a movie like this, it does actually have a bit of a message in there, you know, so, that is kind of interesting. I don't think anyone who actually went to see this movie or anyone who likes this movie probably talks about its meaningful statements or its political ideologies. But it is very true that, you know, they did sort of they did put that in. I have to admit I like this film. I know that it's crazy. I know that there are so many faults with it. They say they're flying over the Pacific Ocean, and you look below them and you can clearly see they're flying over farmland. They say they're at 30,000 feet, and you can clearly see they're only about 1,000 feet off the ground. The aeroplane itself. Now, I don't know if any of you guys have been inside a DC-3, but this airplane is as wide as a living room. Okay, a DC-3, they're tiny. You know, you've got to be built like a beanpole to fit inside them. You know, they were built in the 1930s. You know, I mean, but the inside of this DC-3 looks like a 747. You know, it's absolutely ridiculous. But it's still fun. There's so many faults. There's so many, you know, things. But hey, it's one of those old exploitation movies that you're just meant to sit back late at night, pour a drink, watch the fight. Oh, sorry, that's a Pet Shop Boys line. Pour a drink, and just relax and switch off from life for an hour and a half. Forget about your troubles, and you know, and that's all it's meant to be. It's not meant to be anything. It's meant to be looking at some really, you know, good-looking young people running around naked and it's all just meant to be fun.
Oh yeah, pure entertainment for, especially when, oh my God, when they get to the part with the ritual of the sleeping giant, that is, well, okay, so this poor guy, this woman's like, okay, I'm going to cure your little, ED problem there. So she's like, we're going to do the ritual of the sleeping giant. So basically all she does is she dances naked, and some people are playing on the bongos, and everybody on this island's getting horny. And of course, this poor guy's getting there, and then he sneezes and it's over. But that just cracks me up because they got her dancing, and I'm just like, okay, this is the ritual of the sleeping giant, her dancing topless while people play the bongos. But then the guy starts dancing too, and I'm just like, oh no, please.
but I love the whole idea that they put blindfolds on the musicians, and that stops them from getting turned on while we do this ceremony. And then an entire volcano erupts. I mean, my God, it would have taken the whole island with them.
Oh my God.
It's a volcano.
Yeah, and they were just like, you're a hopeless case, man, can't help you. I mean, we did the ritual of the sleeping giant, everybody else got laid except for you. So.
Oh, dearie me. So I suppose to sum up, we should rate it, shouldn't we?
Totally.
We
do you have any final words on it, Mike? We do have a guest tonight, people.
Oh, yes.
I guess I like the character of the schoolgirl. Like,
Mm-hmm.
That was a nice contrast. I would say that's kind of the only point I would make, I guess.
Okay. Well, yeah, she did stand out because she wasn't trying to just, shag anything that walked. She was, pursuing a person because she was in love. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, she was it was kind of, in a weird way, she was kind of the comedy relief within a comedy film, which is sort of a weird thing to do, but I think she was, in a way. She was, yeah. I mean, I liked the character. I mean, to be honest with you, I actually liked all the characters. I mean, yeah, Robin Stewart wasn't really. Yeah, he's a bit of a prick, but he wasn't. But then he wasn't a bad guy. He wasn't robbing people. He wasn't. He wasn't breaking into people's houses. He wasn't.
Well, my take on that character is, though, you have to teach people how you want to be treated. He had 2 fiancées. First off, hello. The fact that these women are like, okay, you can be engaged to both of us, when I'm pretty sure by Australian law you can only marry one person, can't marry them both.
Correct.
I mean, and then also they knew he was cheating all the time. So you have to teach people how you want to be treated. So if you're dating a cheater and you know it and you accept it, that's what you're going to get. It's not going to get any better than that. He's not going to all of a sudden stop doing that and be a faithful guy. So they were putting themselves in that situation and they were accepting of it. Oh, and they were having fun with it too.
Well, that's the whole point. I mean, they keep sort of saying, "Oh, we're going to win this. We're going to win this." Oh, no, we're not. Yeah, so. They seem to be actually really quite happy with it. I mean,
right.
But the other thing too is you sort of need that because you need. That's part of the story. Them chasing after him all the time.
Yeah.
So it's. Yeah, I mean, in a way, it sort of throws some of these stories on their heads, like where it's always the male chasing after the girl, like in this case, it's the girl chasing after the boy. So, I suppose that's a little bit different, in that sense. But what's also quite interesting is just a little bit of a technical thing is you actually see at the start, when the airplane, actually takes off, and you can actually see all the other airplanes in the airport, and they're actually flying out of a cargo terminal. But you can see all the cargo planes from 1980. But if you have a look, all the IPEC planes, right, which is a cargo company, they're all in the same colour scheme as this. So all they did was just take an IPEC plane and say, "Can we borrow it?" And they just painted Pacific Airlines on it. It's still in the IPEC colours.
That's the way to do it.
Although actually one thing I should say is, what did everyone think of the fairy godmother who narrated the movie?
That was the most useless fairy godmother on the planet, wouldn't you say, Mike?
Yeah, I kind of liked it because it was weird. Like sometimes he would say really weird, disturbing things. So I kind of liked it. Yeah.
Totally, but I was like, it was really just like a pervert observing all the action going on, because that fairy godmother did nothing to help our protagonist whatsoever.
But the other thing too is the fairy godmother. One is a man, right? Not a woman. But just it's like, you know, oh, quit button, hide, don't let this. Oh, she's coming for you. What's going to happen? It was, I don't know. I actually quite liked it, the way he spoke all the way through the film. I actually thought that was one of the more humorous bits in it, actually.
Yeah, I liked him. But yeah, like I said, he or she or it did nothing to help our poor protagonist.
No, nothing at all. Nothing at all. Like you'd sort of say, oh, quit, I've got to warn him. But then he wouldn't do anything.
But yeah, no, I liked it too. That's part of what made the movie funny too.
Yes, yeah. I mean, look, it's cheap humor. I mean, obviously, 1980. You know, this is, you know, it's base, it's gutter humor. You know, but there's nothing wrong with that. You know, because it's like, there's no such. You know what? One thing that really annoys me often, guys, when I hear people say, "Oh, you know, that's not funny. This is funny." Well, no, that's funny to you. It's not funny to the other person, and so you know. It's like the comment, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. We don't always think exactly the same things are funny. I mean, for some people, what is it? The world's funny home videos is the height of comedy. Man being hit in the balls by football. It's the height of comedy. So the thing is that it's all different, you know, and so
totally.
You know, I mean, Benny Hill was one of the highest rating comedians in British TV of all time. You know, I'll do the Sean Spicer thing. He was the highest rated comic in history. Period. So it's like you know. So, but at the same time, you had people like Monty Python doing something incredibly different. You know, so and a lot of people love Monty Python, hate Benny Hill, love Benny Hill, hate Monty Python. It's and
yeah, I mean, humor is so subjective, and yeah, like, and as Mike said at the very beginning of this review, it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, you know. But I love TNA, and I love sex, and I love people, and I love how silly sex is in this movie, because it's not a serious thing at all, and it's just how goofy people look, how goofy people act about sex, how just the goofy situations they'll put themselves in to have sex. I mean, like, they just can't wait till they're on the ground. They're like, oh, let's go, you know, do it in these really uncomfortable chairs on the airplane. It just, I thought it was just so funny, because that's how some people are. They'll do it anywhere. They're animals. They'll do it anywhere.
But I would say to people that, look, if you like carry-on movies, if you were a huge fan of the Benny Hill show, or if you've seen it in reruns, if you even just like American movies, like, what is it, Porky's, movies along those lines, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, even, to be honest with you, if you like the American Pie movies, you probably will like this, because it is a similar sort of style of humour. But just, you know, made many, many years before American Pie. But it sort of kind of follows the same path, same type of,
it's definitely this, it's this, campy sexploitation, but it's like, really all you see is a bunch of boobs. Where actually you see a lot of full frontal nudity from women in this movie. I have to give people a heads up on that, because we don't see a lot of that over here. It exists, but we don't, you're either seeing boobs or bush every 5 seconds in this movie. So let me give you a heads up to my United States American listeners. If you decide to check this movie out, make sure you're not watching this with a room full of relatives. You are going to be so embarrassed. But no, it's just silly. I like it. It does remind me of, just the 80s B-grade exploitation films that were all basically nothing but, it's always a group of usually men trying to get laid. But I think this movie's funny because you have the one that's getting laid all the time, and it's just ridiculous. It's just like literally every woman he runs into is ready to have sex with him. And then the other guy that has women that he can have sex with, but he cannot perform. And it's just funny because you start feeling sorry for the guy. And like I said, you really start being like, okay, is this going to be the one? Is he going to be able to do it? You start kind of cheering him on.
Well, The other funny thing too that you sort of say, giving everyone's a heads up, there's lots of nudity in it and all the rest of it and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you know, I first saw this on free-to-air Australian TV, fully uncut at 8:30 at night.
Oh my God. I love how Australian TV just sounds like the fucking Wild West over there. It's like no rules, anything goes. It's 8 o'clock. Come off the clothes.
Well, they did make a well, it wasn't really a law as such, but they did sort of change the rules a number of years ago that it had to hit 9 o'clock. But that seems to have rolled itself back again. That seems to have rolled itself back again. So it seems to just be anything goes once again. As they say, you can't watch a bit of Australian TV these days without boobs and bottoms and swearing. But, I don't know. What's Canadian TV like, Mike?
Well, Canadian TV in most of the country is very similar to the U.S. Quebec has a lot more nudity. Like it would be probably like Australian or maybe like French TV.
Okay.
But it's very comparable to the U.S. I would say.
Yeah, were you surprised by the amount of boobs and bush in this movie?
The bush, yeah.
I was like, whoa.
Bush on TV on films, yeah.
And in case somebody's missing the boat, when I'm saying bush, I'm not referring to plants on the ground. I am talking about female nether regions that are unshaved. Let me just put it that way. There's a lot of that in this movie.
Well, you have to. It was 1980, Velvet.
No, I'm not criticizing their grooming habits. I'm just letting people know. Just letting people know what they're going to see. That's all.
Well, it's interesting. I've actually seen an interview with Deborah Gray, and she was and she was actually talking about making the movie and all that sort of stuff, and she was actually saying that she prepared for the movie to making sure all her hair was perfect and all her grooming and all this sort of stuff, and she said that Alison Best, who's meant to be the other fiance, I think plays Mandy, I think it's meant to be, and she said Alison Best just basically turned up, got sunburnt, couldn't care less, bit of hair under my arms, I don't give a fuck. And Deborah Gray's there sort of spending so much time. So it's a movie, and Alison Best had just turned up, you ready? Okay, I'm ready, let's do it.
But that's how it is. Some people feel like they have to prepare for these things. I love hearing about movies where actors show up and they didn't even work out. They're not in shape at all. And the director will just be like, you know what, let's have you keep the shirt on for this movie. That's what I heard one actor say. A director actually told him, you know what, I think you look better with your shirt on, so go ahead and keep your shirt on for this movie, because the guy showed up out of shape.
What's like Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now? That's why you only see his face.
Yes,
because he turned up in the Philippines and he weighed the same as a small nation. I mean, he was huge, and he was meant to be this American Special Forces operative, and he was the size of a townhouse.
So it's just funny, these actors, you got to tell them what you want. You don't tell them, they'll take their own artistic interpretation of the character.
Anyway, I think it probably is now really time to rate this.
Right on. Okay.
So what does everybody think? How are we going to rate this on the Eric Roberts rating score of 1 to 5? 1 being the lowest.
And 5 is the highest honor you can bestow.
5 Erics, that's right.
Okay, so this is definitely a watchable film. It's not going to be for everybody. But if you like silly films where basically the plot is just a protagonist trying to have sex and there's lots of gratuitous nudity and just lots of silly slapstick, just a lot of just silly situations like this, I'm going to give this 3 Erics out of a possible 5 Eric Roberts, because I think it's just fun, adult, non-pornographic adult entertainment. So that's me. 3 Erics.
3 Erics. That's not bad. It's a passing grade.
Right.
And probably more than the director expected to get, to be truthful. Mike, how would you rate it?
Pacific.
Okay,
Banana.
I'm sorry, but I have to give it 2 Erics. Sorry.
Oh, that's still not too bad.
2 Erics.
We've given worse on this show.
Oh yes. Well, I'm actually going to. I'm going to go 3.5 Erics. Because I think it's it's not a good film by any means, but but it's fun. It is just fun. And at 3 o'clock in the morning with a glass of scotch, it's kind of perfect viewing. So I'm going to give it 3.5. I reckon it's all right. It's cheap, but it's all right.
I had a lot of fun with this movie, actually. As silly as it is, I actually really enjoyed it.
Well, we'll have to get you to watch an Elven Purple movie then next, Velvet. So
I am quite curious now that you've mentioned those.
Yeah.
I'm like, I might have to check those out now.
I'll organise that for you. All right. Well, we're just going to take a quick break, and we will be right back.
It's time to get excited, short film fans. It's mini movie review time.
Yes, it most definitely is. It's one of becoming, I think I said this last week, one of the most favoured little bits of the show, the mini movie review. And what offering have you found for us this week, Velvet?
All right, tonight we have a sci-fi short movie from Italy. This is directed by Andrea Riccia. Forgive my Italian if I'm mispronouncing that. And this little 7-minute short is called Aliens Night. And it's pretty much almost exclusively CGI with some human interaction. And basically a woman is in her home office, and you get the idea that this woman might have a scientific or medical background, and she has to survive the night when her home gets invaded by aliens, with a very slight twist ending. So what did you guys think of this mini movie from 2014?
Well, I don't know. I like the twist at the end. I'll say that. I like the twist at the end. But I seriously was watching this going, I don't know. Is this just another CGI showcase of look how good we are at CGI? I really don't know. It was an interesting concept. I liked the last 30 seconds. I thought that was fun. I thought that was interesting. But it just, I don't know. I just don't know. This was my cup of tea, to be honest, Velvet. What did you think, Mike?
What did you think, Mike?
Yeah, I kind of liked it. I mean, as someone who's made an independent film, I realize how difficult they are to make, and it was amazing to me. Like, as I understand it, she did all the CGI. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. I believe so. Yes.
I mean, to me, that's pretty impressive that she was able to do all this. There was a lot of problems, like why were the aliens naked? I mean, that's kind of weird. But yeah, and I like the idea of the kind of nerdy scientist turns into a hot Laura Croft type chick. I like that. So yeah, generally I kind of liked it.
This short film got on my radar because it has almost 3 million views on YouTube. And that, I was like, wow, that is a lot of views, first off, for a short film. But also that's a lot of views for a short film on YouTube. So I'm kind of like, wow, so I was like, okay, I got to check this out. Because, whenever you go to the website, you can go to andreariccia.it, since it's in Italy, and check out all of her short films. She's got a Scorpion, Spider. She actually has Alien Nights Part 2, The Grey's Return. There's a lot of... This is her genre, and I apologize if it's actually not a woman. Andrea is kind of a unisex name in the English language, so I'm not sure if this is actually a male or female director. So I apologize if I'm using the wrong gender now. People are sensitive about that nowadays. But I thought this was really fun, and I was like, okay, I got to check out this short that has over almost 3 million views on YouTube, because even they tout this. They're very proud of this on the website. So you can check it out. It's called Aliens Night. There's really not much more to say about it. It runs just a little under 8 minutes, and it's almost exclusively CGI. And as Mike pointed out, the director is also also did all the CGI special effects, and there are a ton in this. And it's interesting to see how they have this one person interacting with all these CGI effects to tell a story about aliens invading your home. So Aliens Night, sci-fi short movie directed by Andrea Riccia, released 2014. You can check it out on her website, her website at andreariccia.it, excuse me, not et.it. All right.
No, I mean, I'd still definitely say to people, watch it, just because I sort of thought, it wasn't really for me. Doesn't mean I'm saying it's bad.
No, it's not bad.
It's not bad. The CGI is actually incredibly good, considering it's all been done by one person.
Right.
Which means this has just been done on a home PC setup. I mean, that's actually very impressive, and I take my hat off. And sort of say, well done for that. I mean, it's like we've always said, there's no bad films. It's just that you don't always necessarily bond or click with everyone you get. I just had a bit of a problem bonding with this. I'm also so over the grey fucking aliens. Does every alien have to be a grey fucking alien? Biologically, it doesn't make any sense. Did anyone study biology at school? But anyway, but it was, but no. I'd still say to people, check it out. It's still good. If you like CGI, then I really think you'll like this. She or he has obviously put a lot of work and a lot of effort into it. And so I do think it's good for that. And I do think the little twist at the end, it's actually worth it just for that, because I thought that was actually really clever. I actually did think the twist at the end was very clever.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah. So yeah. No, I still say check it out. All right, that was it. That was a quick one.
Yeah, I was like, we'll go quick on this one. It's just, it's short, so we don't need to spend too much time on it. Just check it out for the CGI effects and help them get some more views on their YouTube channel. Right on.
But how many views did you say it's got already?
It's got 2.7 million views on YouTube.
Jeez, I wonder.
That's what I was like. I was like, wow, I gotta check this out. And I was
that's
cool. That was interesting.
That's amazing.
Let me get my friends' opinions on this.
That is an amazing number. So it's obviously extremely popular. A lot of people really like this. Yeah, and
it's actually won some awards too. In 2015. So yeah. It's got a couple awards under its belt, too. It was a semi-finalist at the Los Angeles Cinefest. It's an official selection at Vienna Fright Nights in 2015, an official selection at Fanta Festival 2015. So I'm not actually sure if they actually won those awards, but they at least got nominated, which is a feat in itself.
Oh, no.
When there's when there's millions of short films, to even get nominated is something.
No, that's still fantastic. Just next time, can we choose something that looks different to a grey alien, please?
Maybe it should be a cow that gets abducted next time.
Oh, yes, aliens love cows. We all know that. All right. So, all right. Well, we'll just take a quick break, and then we will be back with movie number 2. Yes, we will. Is it going to play? Yes, it is. Here we go. We'll be right back with movie number 2. Now, movie number 2, and this is, I said the last one was interesting. This is really interesting. It's from 1971 from Mexico, called El Topo or El Topo, depending on where you were born, I suppose. And it is a Western, but it's a lot more than just a Western.
Isn't that the truth?
It reminds me of so many movies, that are cult movies that I've seen. And it's a fascinating story, and it goes for 2 hours. It's actually quite long. In fact, in many ways, it's actually 2 movies in a sense, spliced together. Okay, I'm going to try to explain this. So here we go, okay?
Good luck.
All right, everybody sitting down because here we go. Now, it follows our main character, who is a gunfighter, and he's traveling with, I believe it's meant to be his son, who is naked all the time for some reason. I don't quite. I think I get why, but anyway. So he's traveling with his son, who's naked all the time, and they find a village. And
he's 7 years old.
He's 7 years. Yeah.
He's 7 years old.
Yeah, so it's all above board. Yeah, but although there will be some stuff in this movie which has been highly questioned, but anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. Now he travels with his son. He finds this town. Which has been, all the inhabitants have been slaughtered. So he goes to hunt down the people that have done it. He undertakes this act and then leaves his son with the monks to be raised by the monks, and then runs off with a woman from the town to then go and try to kill the 4 greatest gun masters in, I don't know, the world or the country or whatever. And so he can then become the world's greatest gun master. So he goes off and does this. And this is sort of the essence of the first part of the film. Now, the second part of the film will be many years later. Will basically be, I think it's meant to be like about 12, 15 years later, where he has been, without giving too much away, he has been trapped underground and living with a group of it's described as mutants, but basically people who have got physical deformities. Maybe they're missing a leg, maybe they're a short person, maybe, it's not very PC, I suppose you would say, but it is 1971.
Right.
And then but they're trapped underground, so they can't escape because of the fact that they're missing arms and legs and all sorts of things. So he then leaves to build a tunnel so they can escape from this underground lair that they're living in. And then, but outside is a town which is run by not very nice people, and there will be a final showdown then between him and the town, and then his son will come back to seek revenge for leaving him at the orphanage with the priests. And I'm not explaining it well, but I do not know how to explain this film.
I think that's pretty much a pretty good description. This, Mike and I both said off air that we actually both wanted to review this movie. This was both in our bottom list when we were picking movies to review this week, and we both did not realize what we were getting into. We both thought this was a Western, and this movie is not a Western. It has Western elements. It does have the cowboy and the gunslinger and that type of stuff in it, but it's definitely not your straight up Western. This movie has really just disjointed storytelling. So it starts off and you think you know what's going on, but it's just full of oddball characters, really strange visuals, crazy sound effects, and just jump cut edits that go all over the fucking place. And you're just like, I think I know what's happening, but I'm not sure. Oh, does that mean this? Oh, I guess not. What did you think of this movie, Mike?
I kind of liked it. I really liked it because it's so, as you mentioned, it's so weird and strange. I like weird films, and the interesting thing is you can't really find a message. I can't anyway.
I agree.
From what I've read, people can't really understand what it's all about. But it was just so strange. I just loved some of the strange aspects to it.
I agree. I really like this movie as one of those movies where, like you said, I honestly also don't really see a message in this movie. And I don't really hardcore try to find a message in every movie, but most movies do seem to have a general theme or a message that they're trying to get across. Whereas I think this film is really just art. It's really just a guy expressing a lot of different thoughts and feelings and emotions, and he actually just wants to elicit emotion from the viewer. What that emotion is just depends on how you react to the visuals you're receiving from this film. So, again, like, this is such a generic phrase and I say it all the time, but this is just simply not a movie for everybody. Some people are just going to hate this because it doesn't have a strong plot. It's just a lot of different things happening and they're all put into one movie. And either you enjoy the ride and just take it for what it is and, you know, listen to the sound effects, watch the visual imagery, watch the little mini stories that don't really always have a definitive beginning or end or even a steady flow. But I really liked it, actually. I enjoyed the ride. I was like, okay. And then halfway through the movie, like, the whole tone of this movie changes from what you think is supposed to be a Western to this almost like spiritual journey of redemption. So there is maybe, if anything, kind of that message. But also at the same time, it's just such a sudden change that this guy goes from being a gunslinging badass to all of a sudden he feels bad about being a gunslinging badass, and now he wants to seek redemption and he wants to give back to society and he wants to help people, but there's no clear motivation for why he was motivated to make that change.
Well, I think there is a real underlying sort of story to all of this, but it's very disjointed, and it's not really. It's telling elements of another story in a different way. So first of all, when you start watching this film, you sort of think you're watching almost like a spaghetti western. You know,
right.
you almost expect Lee Van Cleef to come riding in, you know. But of course it doesn't go down that path. It's not white hats versus black hats, you know, and that sort of thing. But what I took from it is that I actually believe that this movie, in a sense, is actually filmed in much more of a Japanese style. If you watch a lot of samurai films, I think you will see a very similar style of storytelling, you know, from Japanese cinema. The other thing too is that I think that many of the stories and events which are taking place in this movie come directly out of the Old Testament or out of the Torah, if you're Jewish. So it's you know, I mean, for instance, the town is clearly meant to be Sodom. You know, the fact that the four gun masters all represent different sort of faiths. They're, you know, we have a Buddhist, we have a Christian, we have, like, they're all different sort of, they're sort of representing different elements of humanity. So, you know, I actually think this in many ways is actually sort of telling that story of the Old Testament, just in a very disjointed way.
That's interesting. Yeah, there's a ton of religious imagery in this, but it's not just one specific religion. Like you mentioned, it's a lot of mysticism, I guess is one way to say it. There's a lot of symbolism from various different religions and belief systems. And I don't know what he was trying to do with that. Like, I don't feel like this was supposed to be a modern day retelling of any of those particular religions. I think he was just, again, using those as kind of psychic archetypes, you know, just like they're so embedded in our culture and pop culture that when you see a religious symbol, it has some kind of effect on you, whether you believe in that religion or not. It could be that, you know, it inspires your faith, or you feel angry because you don't believe in it, or you're just kind of like, oh God, not another one of those. Like, I honestly just think, I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, for me, I think this is just so art house. This was just him throwing a bunch of visuals together, trying to elicit a reaction. I mean, but that's just what I got out of the film. I'm not saying that your interpretation's wrong at all. What did you think of, like, all the visual stuff that he used in this, Mike?
Yeah, I kind of get where you're coming from. Like, it seemed to me like the director, he's really interested in just being different. He doesn't want to fit in any mold. So he's just kind of throwing things out and kind of like trying to trick the audience into thinking, oh, this is where he's going, but he throws something else out in it, and you kind of backtrack in what you were thinking. So that's kind of what I think. He's just trying to be different. He doesn't want to fit in any mold or.
Oh yeah, I don't think he's not trying to tell a complete story. I mean, I think he's taking elements from other stories and sort of retelling them and then linking them all together. I mean, for instance, you know, towards the end, we have the crucified goat, which is obviously meant to my mind, is putting out, you know, a symbol. The idea too that, for instance, in the town, when all of his friends are killed, so this town is evil, so then he then goes on a shooting rampage to kill everyone in the town, but then he is himself killed. And then it even goes down that idea of Sodom, where you've got the idea that, the children will like the idea from Sodom is that the human race would continue, but via incest, which is like really crazy shit, right? Mind you, we teach this to our killed kids because we're kids, which is actually unbelievable. Anyway, but it sort of tells that. But in this, we've got the son rides off with who would have been the mother-in-law with another baby. It's these images, from the Old Testament just keep coming back and back and back and back. But the other thing too, though, is I did also wonder whether there was a little bit of a political statement in here, from the sense that it's very interesting that the town, which is, to my mind, clearly meant to be Sodom, is that is not Mexican; it's American. Now, did you notice that? Because it's like,
I definitely saw this as a town that was ran by, well, first off, capitalism. It's very like there's businesses all over the place. Everybody's about making money. It's, you know, it's just, there was definitely there were slaves there. Yeah. I just didn't see this as they had like the way you're saying it's Sodom and Gomorrah. I was interpreting that as Illuminati. So I was kind of looking at it as, people have perverted religion, that they're no longer of faith. They're just following kind of not a cult, but it's just kind of like they're following a belief system because it benefits them. It's something they can see and touch, and it's tangible, and it's in the form of money and slavery and entertainment. I don't know. I mean, like, this movie, if you really try to analyze it, you can see that Warren and I are going off on these crazy tangents about what this fucking movie means. And honestly, I don't think this movie means anything, to be fucking honest. So I'm going to stop even trying to interpret it, but I'm just going to say what I experienced from it is really what's a better way to look at this movie. Like, have you tried to analyze this movie at all, Mike? Like, did you for a minute be like, okay, here's what this is about? Like, did you try to analyze it?
No, like, I just realized, you know, there's really nothing you can do with it. Like, there is some kind of message as Warren was talking about, but, you know, it's just too hard to pin down. And it's, you know, to me, it was just enjoyable, just experiencing it and not really thinking too much. But Warren, I think you're getting onto an interesting point there about the town being like a white kind of town, like it was controlled by white people. Like, I think that's kind of the way it was in Mexico in the old times. Like it was the white settlers that came in and kind of took over and kind of ran things, right? So, and they were kind of, I would say, you know, the white settlers would be kind of repressed and kind of messed up sexually. You kind of see some of these weird things that they're doing. Not just sexuality, but in terms of like violence and aggression, and like they're doing some terrible things in that town.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. And it's when all of the his friends finally break out of these underground caverns and then come running into town, and how are they greeted by the townspeople? You know, it's
not very nicely.
No, not very nicely. And it's just, I found it interesting that there's no real national identity other than the fact that, you know, this is a Mexican film, and of course, the peasantry, I suppose, if you like, from the villages are, of course, all dressed in very Mexican ways. But then suddenly when they get to this town, everyone's in very Western. I don't mean Western as in the movie. I mean as in that non-Spanish Latin American sort of culture. The culture seems quite different. Even like we see the sheriff is clearly wearing an American-style sheriff's badge.
Right.
And so yes, it's almost like this idea that. Or we've sort of played with these religious aspects, but now we're sort of playing with this idea of, like the modern city and the evils that it represents and who it will and won't allow into the halls of power or into the halls of wealth and how it deals with maybe even the indigenous population who is around them. We've got to settle a town how does it deal with the indigenous people? It blows them away. I mean, I think it's, I mean, yes, I know, I agree with you, Vel. You do your head in trying to, read everything that's in here. And the other thing too is that, a lot of people like myself may be reading things into this which were never actually intentionally meant to be in there.
But I mean, that's the purpose of this movie. It does get you thinking. If there is any purpose, is to elicit thought and emotion, and it's definitely doing that with, I think, all three of us. The visuals in this movie, though, drove me crazy, but in like the best way possible, because I was just so entertained, because it was just like, what the fuck am I looking at? Some of the shit in here was crazy, and some of it, honestly, I was a little disturbed, because first off, in the beginning, the whole thing about very beginning, I mean, no punches pulled. They got this little naked kid running around, and I'm one of those people. I haven't been around a lot of children in my lifetime, so if I see a naked 7-year-old child, I'm always kind of like, this is awkward. That's kind of weird. But being told that you're 7 years old and you are now a man. I mean, that's how the movie starts. They're telling this 7-year-old boy, okay, you are now a man. And I'm like, damn, that's a rough life, man. Can you imagine being 7 years old and your parent tells you, okay, today you are now officially an adult? And I'm like, gosh, you haven't had a chance to be a child at all. He had to grow up. He had to be an adult in this situation.
Well, that's where I found this very similar to many samurai films. Where we see similar situations, where I know, watching some Japanese sort of cinema from a similar sort of period where, you would have a samurai father, hand a ball and a sword to a 3-year-old child, and depending on which they chose would define their life, and so wow. I could sort of see those elements in there, but I think the reason why the kid's naked is that when they leave and he's with the monks, he's suddenly dressed. And I think that's sort of the idea of. I don't know if it's the idea of innocence and then suddenly innocence is now lost, so he's now clothed. But it also could be something, completely different. It could be a statement about the church, or he just could have thought it was kind of a weird, wacky thing to do. I really don't know.
I mean, like, I said I would try not to analyze, but I have to admit, with the child's nudity, I looked at it as he's not shielded, which he wasn't. He was not shielded from violence right after the father tells him, okay, now you're a man at 7 years old. There's a scene where there's a man who's dying, and the father wants to put the man out of his misery, so what's he do? He hands his gun to the 7-year-old boy, and the 7-year-old boy blows his brains out. So not shielded from violence at all, and he's not shielded until he becomes a monk, and then he's clothed, and now he's under their protection, and he doesn't have to see these awful, horrible things, and he's going to be versed in, some kind of faith and grow up in that faith and protection. So, I mean, not that I'm trying to analyze this movie or anything, but I had to throw that out there.
What did you think? What did you think of the homosexual element that was thrown in with the monks?
That was all over. That was weird, wasn't it?
That was
strange.
Yeah.
That shit was actually, I couldn't help it. I was just okay, this movie is in like 2 parts, essentially. Like the very first part, you think it's going to be a Western all the way through, and then it hits you with the second part, and it becomes this whole spiritual, redemption journey. So this first whole part, it is so rife with really weird-ass characters. So you got basically the colonel who's taken over this village, and he's, they're forcing the monks to dress up like women, and his guys are dancing with the monks like the women and forcing them to kiss them and make them wear lipstick, and then they're riding them like horses and they're spanking their asses with cactus leaves. I can't make this shit up, people. And then like the fucking gunslinger comes into town with his naked son, and this cracked me up when he shot the colonel's toupee off, like just shot his toupee off, and then he castrates him, and I'm just like, wow, this just gets weirder and weirder. It's just going on and on. But before that, he runs into the gunslingers. There's a shoe fetishist, and oh God, I'm sorry, I'm not we all have our kinks. That's cool, but I'm one of those people. I can't handle watching people with a shoe fetish sticking shoes in their mouth. That grosses me out so bad. And they do that in this movie where he just like is sticking as much of that shoe in his mouth as he can. I'm like, okay, I get it. He's got a shoe fetish. What's the point? There is no point. We're going to keep showing you this guy's sucking on the shoe. Then another guy makes like a naked woman out of beans, and he's humping the ground. And then it's just like, what is? Oh, then the balloon squeal duel. Like this guy blows up a balloon. He puts it on the ground, and it just squeals. And I was like, is that supposed to be like an egg timer? Is that like when the balloon's done squealing, we shoot each other?
Yeah, it's an egg timer, basically. There's some crazy shit in this. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I found myself that because it's in sort of in two parts, if you like, is when we got to the end of part one, I sort of thought, oh, okay, it's over, right? Okay, and then it restarts, and then I had a look at the timer, and it's like, holy fuck, I've got another hour of this. You know,
yeah, this movie it's a long 2 hours, but it's for me it wasn't boring, but it's so much random stuff that it can get a little tiring to watch because you're just being bombarded with these strange visuals, and you're not really being given a solid plot line to follow, so you just don't know what's coming next. And just like I like the whole, I guess, kind of storyline when he's seeking out these masters, like I guess they're supposed to be gunslinger masters, and they all have a lesson to teach him, and he has to fool each of them to win, but he doesn't really. I don't know, just a lot of weird stuff. Like I like the rabbits. There was one guy that was surrounded by rabbits. And Mike, what did you think of the rabbit?
that was wonderful. I like that, and it was so weird that he caused them to die. Like, what is that?
Oh God, I know. He was like a walking plague. He was just like killing rabbits in his wake. It's just weird. And then they buried the guy like after they killed like I don't know the rabbit master or whatever the hell he was. After he dies, they like bury him with rabbits. I'm just like they covered him in rabbits, and I'm like, oh my God, yeah. This movie, guys, I can't promise too much. It was interesting his use of people with physical deformities. This was not, makeup or CGI. These were people with actual deformity, and like one of them that I don't want to say it's a disturbing visual, but it's definitely a visual that might catch you off guard. Is when he goes to find, I think it's the first master. Basically, one of his assistants is made up of two men. This one man has no arms. The other man has no legs. So what do? You put the guy with no legs on top of the guy with... I mean, am I getting this wrong? One of them was missing arms. One of them was missing legs.
He was
they were paired up
piggybacking
together to make a full human.
That's
basically. Right. Okay, so I was just like, that's interesting. So, yeah. It was bizarre.
It is, and I think too, because the movie jumps a lot with its editing and scenes go forward and then back and then forward again, like for no real reason.
Yes.
And almost like trying to capture events but without showing the events. It's a very, very interesting form of editing. But if you mix that in with the fact that this movie, of course, is in Spanish, of course, as it would be, it can make it a little bit difficult if you don't speak Spanish to follow, I have to admit. But you've got to concentrate on this one. You can't actually turn away for a minute. If you turn away for a minute, you're going to miss something. It's like, and that is the only difficult thing I find about this film is that you do need to give it 100% attention for 2 hours. And that's a big ask for a lot of people.
Yes. Yes. There's, I just want to throw this out there. We don't have to analyze or anything. There's a rape scene in this movie, and that's really odd because, like, this woman runs off with this guy, but for whatever reason, they have a random rape scene where he's raping her. And then it cuts to her asking this guy if he loves her, and he's like, yeah, I love you, and she's like, well, I don't love you, but I'll love you after you kill all these other people. And I'm just like, wow, that is literally the most pointless rape scene I've ever seen in any movie. So I just want to throw that out there. It's not as graphic as some of the rape scenes that are in movies nowadays, but it's there. So I just want to throw that out there for people that avoid that kind of stuff in their cinema.
Highly, well, I was about to say we can't actually just pass over that scene because it's one of the most controversial parts of the entire movie.
Yes.
Because of the way it was filmed and what happened when it was filmed.
Yes.
And
I was actually shocked after I watched this movie and read up on this, and I'm like, fuck. Okay, I can't even process. My brain can't even process this at the moment. Yeah, so I'll let you.
So,
I'll let you continue.
Well, how we should just say, there is something which is happening, which has been happening now for about the last 20 years around the world, and that is that where people are with cinema, they're starting to play with ideas where they're going to make scenes that normally would be faked or simulated, but they're going to make them real. So they're really going to beat somebody up, or they're really going to have sex, or, something along these lines. Now, this scene was shot in that vein, but this was 1971. So that's interesting. That is sort of interesting.
I like the way you said it. You can, for people that are curious and feel like we're kind of glossing over it, because I don't want it to get out of hand. But you can definitely read up on interviews with the director where he talks very openly and candidly about filming that scene. And when you see it in the movie, honestly, and I hate to say this, but honestly, if you watch the movie, if we hadn't told you about it, you honestly might kind of not really notice it. It's just kind of like, I didn't realize to the extent of what it was until after I was reading up on it. And I'm like, okay, it was in the movie and I was kind of like, that's weird, but I wasn't disturbed by it. I hate to say that, but I wasn't disturbed by it. I wasn't disturbed until I learned about the scene after the movie. So it's kind of, I don't want to say, oh, if you blink, you'll miss it. It's not to that point, but at the same time, it's not as graphic. As a lot of the stuff you see nowadays, even though it's supposed to be real. So, if that makes sense, okay.
Well, that was something I wanted to ask you, Mike. Is that how do you feel about? I mean, obviously we've got this example in this film, but especially in a lot of independent films who are trying to push barriers now. How do you feel about that in filmmaking?
When they try to, instead of simulate it, they make it real. Like, okay, we're going to really do this and film it and put it in the movie. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think that's an interesting technique, and I think it has its place. But obviously, in this case, I mean, they've gone way too far, I would say. I mean, you just can't do that sort of thing. But, in other situations, like, for example, if you're in a fight scene, maybe that would work as long as you can take precautions and so people aren't going to get hurt, but then you get a very realistic scene. So I understand that, but you just can't take it that far.
No, I 100% agree. I mean, the whole idea is if we look at many of the modern movies that we're sort of referring to, everybody knows what's going to happen. They've signed contracts. Everybody has agreed to what's going to happen. If someone is going to be punched for real, they have signed a contract saying that, yes, I agree to be punched for real. If they're going to have sex, they sign a contract saying that, yes, I agree to have sex. The problem with this is that the actress had no idea what was going to happen. And that is the thing which has made this scene so controversial.
But like I said, for those of you that want to do research on this, it's really readily available. So we're not being sensationalist or anything. This is actually well documented, and you can read up on this if you're interested in learning more about this. But at the same time, if you watch this movie solely for that scene, I hate to say this, but you're probably going to be disappointed because it's not filmed in a way that it would be filmed today, where it would be extremely graphic and it would mentally scar you. There's so much going on in this movie with crazy visuals that this honestly just fits right in. Because like I said, when I watched it, I was like, that's weird that he's being violent towards her. But then all of a sudden it cuts to something else. And now they're talking about, do you love me? So I'm like, okay, that was really weird.
It's very weird because I do not understand why they did it, because it's not necessary to the plot.
It adds nothing to the story. Exactly.
And I know I've read the interviews and stuff with him, which sort of says, it all was fine in the end and all this sort of stuff, but that's not really the point.
I maybe I shouldn't compare it in this vein, but it's kind of like with I can't believe I just forgot his fucking name. Jesus Christ. The director who can never come back to the United States, but he still
Roman Polanski. Roman Polanski.
Thank you. It just fell out of my head. I hate to say it. It's kind of in the vein with Roman Polanski. Having, some would say rape, some would say sex. I mean, that it's very controversial. And the only reason I even bring it up is because the girl at the time, who was 15, has forgiven him, and she even wants the United States to drop charges. So, I mean, when it gets to the point where the victim's kind of like, oh, that was a long time ago, can we forget about it? What do you do? What do you say? What's right? What's wrong? Who decides? It just this film definitely pushed a boundary in that. And also, the only reason I bring this up, because supposedly, even though rape's not a consensual act, the way the director twists this, and I'm not saying the director's lying, but the director's kind of basically saying this was a consensual rape. Which, again, I'm kind of like,
I'm not too sure how those two words go together, to be truthful.
Exactly. So let me put it out there. I just wanted to, I didn't really want to bring this up during the review, but at the same time, I was kind of like, oh, you know what? Let me just throw that out there for people that are sensitive to this or just don't want to watch movies that have this kind of controversy in it. Skip El Topo. But for those of you that are intrigued by, films that push boundaries, this is definitely one of them. So.
Yes, well, there's no doubt that this film pushes boundaries. It's an interesting film. I mean, there's no doubt that I am glad I saw it. I'm definitely glad I saw it. I must admit, at several stages through this movie, I was sort of saying, "What the fuck were you thinking, Velvet?"
I was saying it too, and I picked it. So I didn't know. I thought it was a Western. I really had no idea what it was. It was one of those random times where I'm like, I'm going to pick a cult film at classic, and I was like, I wanted something that was not English speaking. I wanted something that was not from the 80s, something that was a little older, and El Topo came up. And so I just checked to make sure I was able to find, viewable copies for all of us. And then I'm like, without doing any homework, I'm just kind of like, okay, Spanish language, 1970s. I think it's a Western. This will be good.
Well, but the thing is, though, there is no doubt that this is a cult film. This is a cult film. And, in fact, it's also interesting that when this movie was released, it was because obviously Mexico is a highly conservative country. And there was no way, this was going to get released in cinemas in Mexico, and it would be basically shown at midnight screenings for special people and whatnot.
And a lot of people actually credit this film as getting the whole midnight madness, like the midnight screening thing going, because John Lennon was a fan of this film, and he actually helped to get this film distributed in the United States, and it was shown as midnight screenings. And that's how the cult following built for this film.
Yeah. So it's
pretty interesting.
Yeah, there's no doubt it's a famous cult film, and it deserves to be spoken about. Whether my life is more complete after watching it, I would seriously have to question that. But I am glad. I've seen it. I'm definitely glad I've seen it. Sorry. No, go ahead, Mar.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to make one more point about another controversy. Certainly not as controversial as the rape scene, but like the use of animals.
I was wondering about that. I didn't even do any homework on that. I was so afraid to.
Yeah, so obviously it looks like a tremendous number of animals gave their lives to this film, and probably some of them suffered pretty badly as well. And the filmmaker admitted to that. What he said was, at the time he just thought that film was so important that certain sacrifices had to be made. So I just wanted to make that point.
Wow.
Again, he's he's going a bit too far. And
Wow.
in the 70s, I guess it was more accepted, but it certainly would never happen.
No. I was curious about that, and I didn't bring it up because I didn't do enough homework on it, and I'm glad you did, Mike. Yeah, that's another thing. In this movie, you see a lot of dead horses, dead sheep, dead rabbits, and I was honestly at one point kind of like, I hate to say this, but is that real? Like, because nowadays so many movies we take for granted that everything is fucking fake, that when we see something real, we assume it's fake. And I was kind of like, I wanted to stay in that sphere where I'm kind of going, I think it's fake because it's a movie. But now I'm like, fuck, this movie's from 1970. I think those animals are really dead. So thank you for doing the homework on that, Mike, because I wasn't sure and I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do the homework on that.
Yes, this is definitely not a film that if you're vegan or vegetarian, or even a big animal lover or animal activist, you are going to have some issues, when you find out that was real. I suppose my only defense for it all is that it was the early 70s.
Right.
That doesn't really make it right. I mean, I know a lot of people sort of say, hey, there was slavery in America, but hey, it was the 1860s, It doesn't actually make it right, just because it was, back in time sort of thing. So it's difficult. It is difficult when you realize that they were killed for the movie. Yeah, that is.
Yeah, that was a really common thing, not so much in 1970, but I mean, like in the history of film, especially when film began, and they didn't have all these laws in place to protect children, to protect stuntmen, to protect animals, and it's just shocking to what degree filmmakers will go to get that shot, even if it means costing the life or well-being of an animal or a person. And this film's a perfect example of that.
Yes, I mean, I would have no problem with filmmakers who, let's say, used carcasses which had been, let's say, killed for other purposes, to which they would go and possibly buy from abattoirs or something. Right. Especially at a time when you couldn't fake it, if you know what I mean.
Right.
But at the same time, I think there are still, limitations. It's... I mean, for me personally, I mean, an animal is a living creature. It can't be put through these sorts of things for our entertainment. I mean, we don't even allow, lions and bears and circuses anymore, let alone the killing of, of animals. So it's hard to watch. I suppose my only thing is that, to the filmmakers, I sort of say bad people, but in watching it now, well, it's been made. I mean, I'm not one of these people who's then going to sort of say, well, don't watch it or boycott it because that happened. It's history. It happened. Take it on board so you make sure it never happens again.
Yeah, there you go. Well said. Well said.
Yeah.
Well said. This movie, had no idea what I was getting into. I did enjoy it. But after reading it, I'm just like, oh my God. Honestly, if I knew this stuff before I watched it, I honestly would have been like, I'm not watching this movie. But it's worth checking out. It's a cult classic for a reason. There's a reason that John Lennon, famously known for being in the Beatles, really campaigned to get this movie circulated in the United States so other people could see it. I mean, there's a lot of unconventional filmmaking in this regarding realism and just concepts of faith and redemption, love triangles, violence. It's the only thing that I think, no, this movie has music in it too. I was going to say the only thing that's missing is music. No, this movie has everything. This movie's just, and I don't mean that in a good way. It just has everything. Put everything in a fucking blender, put it on, chop it up, pour it into a glass, and see if you can drink it up. I mean, this is a challenging film.
Yes, I think for lovers of art house cinema, you've probably already seen this, actually.
Right.
But if you're starting to find that you're becoming more and more interested in art house, then this is definitely one to have a look at. But if you still like to go to the cinema, I don't know, to see the latest version of Tarzan, you're probably not going to like this. This is hard work. There's no doubt it's hard work.
And like I said, not just from the whole perspective, all the crazy shit that's going on, but just you have to pay attention because even though this is so loosely plotted, if you don't pay attention and you try to come back in this movie, you're literally going to be like, okay, I already did not know what's going on. Now I'm just completely lost. Like, this is a movie you have to watch when you can give it your full attention. I wanted to mention this really quick because I thought it was kind of funny. Okay, so I believe the version that all three of us watched was in Spanish with English subtitles, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we all heard the original, basically the original voices. Did you notice that some of the women in this movie had very, very, very manly voices?
I hadn't noticed that, to be truthful. Oh, no. One of them is dubbed.
Okay, but it sounded straight up like a man. That did not sound like a woman.
No. You know the woman that he picks up after he kills the first gunmaster? The woman in black? Right, okay. Well, it's a female actor, but with a male voice.
I was just like, in the town, too, there was a woman that that was a strange scene there's a scene in the movie where it's that town, and at first I thought it was supposed to be a brothel, then I was like, oh, I guess it's kind of supposed to be like a spa or something, and there's a black male servant that's helping all these white women, and like several of the white women have very manly voices, and they're trying to take sexual advantage of this poor black slave, and I'm just like, this is just bizarre. Okay, but everything in this movie was bizarre, so I don't know why I'm even surprised.
There's another scene with that one gunfighter. I think it was the first gunfighter, the blind one.
Uh-huh.
I think,
yeah.
He had a very feminine voice. I thought that was a
They did.
Yes.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So,
I think that was, again, just a play on perception in this movie, that they didn't want you to take anything at face value. So, I mean, there was a lot of there was rape, there was forced homosexuality, there was forced feminization, and I guess there was also forced masculinity on, some of the women, I guess, because even the female gunslinger is not dressed up as a woman, she's dressed up as a male cowboy. So
yes, it's an interesting film. It's an interesting film. It's not going to
talk about this one for hours.
Yeah, look, it's not going to be for everybody, but I think, as I said before, if you're either into art house or you're just discovering art house, this is one that you're going to have to see, because it's probably a movie that if you're starting to associate with other people who are into art house, they're going to bring up at some stage. So it's probably a good one. You do need to see it. So any final words on El Toro or El Topo?
El Topo. I'm going to stop there because like I said, this movie we could talk about for hours, because it's just, I don't think it has any solid interpretation for us to give. We can only just give our thoughts and feelings and theories.
Well, it is interesting. Did notice the line, though, in the movie that, of course, El Topo refers to the mole.
Yes,
right.
The animal mole, not a black mole on your skin.
Yes, the animal, and it mentions how the mole lives underground, but sometimes comes up to see the light, but then will return back. Make of that what you will, but if you think about that statement and then watch the movie, the title starts to make sense. But otherwise, you would say, why is a movie about a gunslinger called The Mole? It doesn't, but once you watch it, it'll start to make a little bit more sense, I think.
But only a little.
Only a little. All right, how are we going to rate this one, guys?
Oh, my goodness gracious. I did enjoy this, and it was just like very unconventional storytelling. Had no idea what to expect. Nothing was really predictable in my mind. A lot of controversy surrounding this film, and honestly, like I said, if I knew about the controversy before I picked it, I honestly wouldn't have picked it. I'm that kind of person. If I know too much controversy, that doesn't draw me in. That tends to scare me away. So I'm glad I did go in with a blind eye, so I was able to look at this movie subjectively before all the stuff that we found out. So I am going to give this a pretty decent rating. I am going to go ahead and give this a 4 Erics out of a possible 5 Eric Roberts, because it's definitely a cinematic experience. Whether it's a good one or a bad one, you'll have to decide that for yourself. But it's definitely worth checking out.
All right, Mike, what do you think?
So I think I would give it. I think I would give it a 4 as well. The controversies aside, I loved it. It was weird. I like weird films.
I feel the same.
It's do you know, I have no idea how to actually rate this one, because there's one.
You can give it moles.
Well, yeah, I'll rate it in moles. It's like there's one side of me that says that this is experimental art house cinema, and I'm really impressed by that, and I would agree, and I would say it's worth like 4 moles. But I shouldn't say that. It sounds terrible. I'll go back to
4 topos.
4 topos. But then there's the other side of me when I realise what went on with the making of this film, with the the levels of violence and assault and animal cruelty and things like that. That I have a real problem then giving it a high score.
I understand.
So I think for me, because of that, I'm going to give it 2.5. I'm going to fall halfway because, yes, there's a lot in this movie, and as a cult film, yes, it's kind of amazing. But there's so much things in this that I've got a personal moral issue with that they did that I would then go back down to 0. So I think I'm going to sort of fall halfway and give it a 2.5.
Okay. Now, I understand that completely. Like I said, if I knew all this, I wouldn't have even picked this movie, because I would have just been like, nope, not touching it. But found out after the fact, and I'm like, well, how'd you feel while you were watching the movie? Before you knew all this, how'd you feel? So I went off of that, but I totally respect and I do understand what you're saying, because I felt that way too.
Well, I know it's like you and I, Velvet, both have a bit of an issue with the what are they often called, the nutsploitation films. The exploitation films using like set during the Third Reich, it's such a. For instance, the Third Reich is a topic which needs to be told and told forever, because we never want to repeat such a hideous event. But the thing is that when we make exploitation out of such a hideous event, I start to get very uncomfortable, and I started to get some of those feelings when watching this. I understand. And so that's sort of where I'm coming from. If people can forgive me for that,
yeah, no, I totally get you.
Yeah, so people forgive me for that. All right, I reckon it's time to. We've got one more to come, and I must admit, this is my favourite of the ones that we actually are talking about. So we're going to take a very quick break, and then we're going to be back with our third and final film for the podcast. And you're going to love it or hate it, but stay tuned. Now, our final movie for the podcast is this is a movie which has gone on to influence quite a lot of stuff in our pop culture. And it is called They Live from 1988, directed by John Carpenter. And it's a movie which was described once as a forgotten masterpiece. So it's kind of interesting. There is a certain cheapness to this movie, but the message it tells is really interesting, and it really does keep you, held in, as I think most of John Carpenter's, movies do. Now, it stars Rowdy Piper. Now, does everyone knows who Rowdy Piper is, don't they?
Yes. So, in case you don't, classic WWF wrestler before the WWF became the WWE. So, yeah.
And Keith David, who of course would be in another incredibly famous John Carpenter movie, The Thing. So he is in this movie as well, and they're basically the two major stars. Now it's based off it's either a novel or I think it's a short story called 8 O'Clock in the Morning. I believe that's right. That's right.
Right.
And it tells the story of a man played by Rowdy Piper who comes into a town looking for work. And it's obviously it's set in the late 80s, early. In fact, I think they actually say 1990. I actually think in the movie, if I'm not mistaken, and comes into a town looking for work. He's down on his luck, so he comes in and he gets a job working on a construction site. He's taken in this sort of like homeless. What do you call it? I've never seen such a thing.
I think the word, it's not a very nice way of saying it, but we oftentimes call that a shanty town.
Shanty town, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when homeless people set up a population in an area that's not being used, and they make these makeshift houses, and it's a little community where they take care of each other. They're homeless. I mean,
I know they exist in Brazil and South Africa, and I never knew that such places existed in the United States, to be honest. Although I don't know if that's maybe just made up for this movie or if that's a real thing.
There's definitely a homeless population, but usually a lot of times they're not able to set up communities to that extent anymore because, well, no city wants to admit that they have that level of homelessness, so they always kind of dissipate them, like, you can't sleep here, you can't stay here, so...
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's living in this shanty town on the outskirts of the town. And actually, it's more than the town. It's a proper city. You can see the skyscrapers and all the rest of it. Now, there is a church which is next to this camp, and he thinks there's something a bit fishy going on at the church, so he goes to investigate. Now, to cut a long story short, something fishy is going on in the church. I can't give too much away in this, otherwise it will sort of spoil it too much, but you're going to sort of know what's going to happen anyway. But the resistance, if you like, the resistance to the government, to all of society, it's one of their headquarters and they're operating out of there. And he will soon learn that the world he lives in is not the world he thought it was. Who controls the world is not who he thinks controls the world. I'm being really careful here, Velvet. I'm not too sure how much I should or shouldn't give away.
We'll do some minor spoilers as we do the review, but we won't give away the big pieces, if that makes any sense. But we'll definitely do some minor spoilers. Because this movie's been around since 1988, so it's not like it came out last week and we're ruining it for everybody.
True. That's very true. And then so basically, our two heroes will team up together, although not very willingly at first. We'll get to that in just a minute. That fight scene. Anyway,
I can't wait.
We'll get to that in just a minute. But they team up to join the resistance and to basically take on these terrible overlords who are, in fact, truly controlling the earth. Well, although it's a little bit... and this is where the story gets a little bit confused, actually. But once again, we'll get to that in a minute. What's everyone's thoughts?
All right. Well, I came here to chew bubble gum and review movies, and I'm all out of bubble gum. So yeah, no, this movie, I love this movie. This They Live. It grew on me, honestly, because honestly, this came out in 1988. So around the time I saw it, I was a very young child, and honestly, I didn't get all the social commentary in this movie at that age. I was just like, oh, wow, there's aliens. Yeah, I said it, guys. Minor spoiler. There are some aliens in this movie. John Carpenter's take on the type of aliens that you see in this movie, even to this day, are still rather freaky looking. We won't spoil everything, but one of the ways is Roddy Piper gets to be one of the people that learns how to see the aliens. So this really just opens up his whole world when he realizes that basically the upper class, they're the upper class right now because they're basically trading wealth in exchange for submission so the aliens can farm the planet and use it for what they want and eventually turn all the people who don't play ball into slaves. And it's just, there's a lot going on in this movie. But as a kid, I was just like, aliens, Roddy Piper, this is so awesome. But as an adult, I'm like, wow, okay, aliens, Roddy Piper, and social commentary. This is a really great film that it is becoming a bit dated with the special effects and obviously the fashion, the choice of language, that type of stuff. However, the message is still very universal and also very current. But what do you think about this movie, Mike? Because I know you love this movie.
Yeah, so I absolutely love this film because it deals with one of the most important concepts I'm interested in. It's the idea that what we see as reality is actually an illusion. You know, like you look at physics. I mean, nothing we experience is really as it is. It's something completely different, right? Mm-hmm. It's not as it appears, and that's, to me, that's the most important thing about this film. It's talking about the people controlling things. They're not who we think they are. Mm-hmm. In the case of the movie, they're alien beings that are using the planet. But in our society, what we have are people, like they're kind of a subset of our population that ends up controlling the world, and they have these unique characteristics, and they just kind of tend not to care about other people. Mm-hmm. So to me, this was like I'm very interested in examining these kind of dark personality disorders, mm-hmm. and so that's why it's so important to me. That's how I see it. Like he's talking about how the ruling class is different. They're alien. They lack humanity. Mm-hmm. And to me, this is why I love it so much.
That's a great interpretation of this film, too. I love that. That's really cool. And you can definitely get that out of this film. This film definitely is open for interpretation. Although John Carpenter, the director, has gone on record saying what he says the film is about, that doesn't matter because film is like poetry. It can be interpreted in so many ways. What you get out of the film is going to be different from what I get out of the film, from what Warren gets out of the film. And I love that you put that perspective on it because I love that nothing is as it seems and who's really pulling the strings. I think that's great. And this film definitely plays on that theme very heavily.
Although there is one thing that must be said, and that is that, you know, we're talking about how everyone takes something different, obviously, from a story. But mm-hmm. John Carpenter has made one thing incredibly clear in regards to the message of this movie. And that mm-hmm. was that when the movie came out, and still to a degree today, there are a number of white supremacists who use this movie as a statement about the Jewish conspiracy. And John,
oh my God.
Okay. And you can sort of understand where they come from. I don't mean I support them because they're all nut jobs, but I mean, but you can understand that they're saying the Jews are all living with us, but they're controlling all the money and, you know, all this.
Oh God.
So, you know, all these Hitler-esque type ideas, right? Mm. Now, John Carpenter has been very, very clear in saying this has nothing to do with that. If white supremacists want to take this movie as their own, that's their choice, but this movie does have nothing to do with that. So
I love that he spoke up.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring that up, that even though we do see our own things in movies, in this mm-hmm. case, you know, if you have a slight tinge of the alt-right and you see that in this movie, you are wrong. It is not about that.
I love that you said that too.
Yeah.
So yeah, as you can see, this movie has something for everybody, whether you agree with their politics or not. Okay, let's talk about the acting in this movie. Okay, first off, Roddy Piper. I really like him in this movie. I think he's so well cast for this. They originally, John Carpenter had actually originally planned to cast Kurt Russell, and he decided not to cast Kurt Russell because he'd already had him in his last 3 films. He had him in The Thing, Big Trouble in Little China, Escape from New York, and he was going to actually cast him in this, and he was like, let me switch it up a little. But Roddy Piper, actually, I thought he was very well acted in this. What'd you guys think?
I would agree. I was kind of surprised when I first saw it. Like, a wrestler, he's actually a pretty good actor.
Yeah.
Oh, well, look, I mean, we do see a number of people come from careers that have nothing to do with acting, although I suppose you could say wrestling has a lot to do with acting.
Right.
So there is that underlying thing. But, well, when I say wrestling, I'm talking about, television professional wrestling is what I'm talking about. Not Olympic wrestling. So there is a background there. I thought he was actually pretty good. Would this movie have been better with Kurt Russell? Yeah. But in saying that, I thought he was actually really good. He definitely looked like he was the part, he did look like he was this construction worker who sort of, lobbed into town. Yeah, he's very muscly and all the rest of it. Maybe a bit more muscly than you would expect, but hey, that's all right. There's nothing wrong with that,
Well, you know what? That adds to the perv factor of this.
Well,
film.
yeah, it does add a perv factor. Yeah,
I thought that was actually kind of funny because a lot of times you say that you'll be like, "This movie has a perv factor," but no. All joking aside, I think it was obviously unintentional. But there's a scene where Roddy Piper is working construction. He's not wearing his shirt, all muscled up, and I'm thinking, you know what? That's an '80s sex appeal stereotype, the topless construction worker. And I was just like, this is actually really attractive to look at. I'm really enjoying this right now.
Yeah, there's definitely there's definitely perv factor in this. So there definitely is that. There's no doubt, absolutely no doubt about that. But one of the other things too, of course, is I think we're all used to artwork with the word obey.
Yes.
And so if you don't know where a lot of that has come from, watch this film.
Yeah, there's we can definitely touch on that. Again, minor spoilers. We're not going to totally ruin it for you so you guys can enjoy this movie. There is a lot of subliminal messaging in this film. Not so much for the actual viewer at home, but this movie touches on the whole theme of subliminal messaging and government or, consumerism using subliminal messages to feed their agenda and slowly mind control the public. There's actual scenes in the movie where there's that small group in the know. They know something's going on, and they have a group of hackers that interrupt TV programs, and the people don't care. They're like, oh, this idiot again, what's he babbling about? Put the show back on. And people actually get headaches when people are trying to tell them the truth. Like, they're that brainwashed. They can't handle the truth. They don't want to handle the truth. They're brainwashed. Ignorance is bliss. They're happy where they're at. Even when they're broken, poor, and homeless, that's, they want to stay in that, except for the few who can see or who can hear. And what do you guys think of, so the way they portray this in the movie, the people who can see the truth see it in black and white at first. And what do you guys think of that? Did you like the whole black and white to see the truth type thing?
Well, I think that's really meant to be the idea of it's the glasses. Because later on we will see what the world looks like in colour. Like
I said, later it does. But in the beginning they did that to show the difference.
Yeah, I think that's just meant to give you the idea of when he is looking through the glasses and when he isn't. I think it's just a filmmaker's trick of trying to let the audience know when he's using the glasses and when he's not using the glasses. I don't actually think
did you like it?
Oh, yes, no, I did. Sorry,
I wasn't asking why. I was asking, do you like it?
Oh, yeah, no. Yes, no, sorry. Yeah, no. I did like it. I thought it was good. I like the switches between black and white and colour, because it separates the two worlds. It separates the real world to the fantasy world we're living in. and then black and white is the actual real world we're actually living in. So, yeah, I did like it, and I think it worked well too, because this dark, evil world is black and white, which is even just another added little thing, you know. So no, I thought it worked really well. What did you think of that, Mike?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Bill, that when they're saying black and white, I never thought of it that way. Like, it's clear, it's black and white. Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah, it's very cool. I love that too. The film is full of great dialogue. It's kind of cheesy 80s style. There's a lot of great one-liners, and I think pretty much Roddy Piper's got most of them. If you've ever heard this saying, "I've come to chew bubble gum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubble gum," you can thank Roddy Piper for that one. He actually ad-libbed that line for this movie.
Oh, did
and
he?
It's gone down. Yes, and it's gone down in pop culture. He had a list of stuff that he was rehearsing that he was possibly going to use for wrestling, and he showed them to John Carpenter, like, "Hey, do you like any of these?" And he's like, "The bubblegum one's interesting." And he's like, "Okay, I'll do that." And so, yeah, he said it, and it's a part of our pop culture, cult classic, cemented status. But yeah, just I love how they just interact in this movie. Keith David, I really like in this movie. He's in one of my favorite movies of all time. There's something about Mary, and so pretty much anything he's in, I'm always like, yay, Keith David. He just always has that smug, smart-ass look on his face. But he's a relatable guy in this. He just seems like a down on his luck, hardworking dude. He just wants to keep his nose to the grindstone. He doesn't want any drama. But unfortunately, he gets drawn into this. And I think he and Roddy Piper really play against each other so well in this, which you guys know where I'm going with this. There is a very long fight scene in this movie.
Long? Long?
It is 5 minutes and 20-second fight scene. They rehearsed it for 3 weeks, and John Carpenter loved it so much that he kept the entire fight scene in the film, didn't cut anything, and supposedly when Roddy Piper and Keith David are actually hitting each other in this movie, they are actually hitting each other. They only fake hitting each other in the face, and they only fake hitting each other in the groin. The rest of it's supposed to be real. So what did you guys think of the fight scene in this movie?
So, yeah, I absolutely love the fight scene. Like, to me, in my interpretation, it's just showing how incredibly difficult it is to show the truth to someone that's been brainwashed into thinking a certain way. So that's why I love it so much.
Yeah, that's great.
See, that's such a great viewpoint. I really love that, Mike, actually. I reckon that's amazing. Yes, that idea of how difficult when someone is blinded to the truth to be able to turn them around, because they will not listen or hear. They're in their own frequency as such. Whereas I was watching it and just sort of thinking, I think they did it as a really long fight scene simply because they cast Roddy Piper. Right? But I like your interpretation more, Mike. I think it's much better.
I mean, essentially, it goes both ways. But, I think Roddy Piper kind of wanted to be like, because I wonder whose idea it was to do this long-ass fight scene. Because I don't know to what point that was scripted. Because I only know that they rehearsed this, like I said, for 3 weeks. And that they kind of surprised John Carpenter with, like, okay, here's the fight scene. And he's like, oh, well, we're just going to use the whole thing because that's awesome. But no, seriously, why are they fighting? Because Roddy Piper's character in this movie is trying to show Keith David the truth. And Keith David's like, fuck that. I don't want to know. I want to be ignorant and stay in bliss and not deal with the drama. And Roddy Piper's like, no, I'm going to show you the fucking truth right now. And that's what the fight is about. So, I mean, really, Mike, you're spot on. It's hard to show people the truth when they don't want to know.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too that, I think everyone has seen the classic piece of artwork of Andre the Giant with Obey.
Yes.
Now, of course, Obey comes from this movie because of all the signs that you will see around, town with, obey, sleep, you reproduce, buy, all these different signs everywhere. But so it's amazing that this has, and I think that's where, that comment "forgotten masterpiece" has actually came from. it's also interesting too that right now and last year, this movie has been used endlessly in memes in a certain nation's election. Which is really, really interesting. So, people obviously know this film. They know what this film's about. And so the statements that are being used, they're even rehashing today. This is from 1988, 2017, and people are still retelling the message from 1988 in a political event that's happening right now. So this movie has definitely, got into people.
Yes. Absolutely. What did you guys think of the aliens? So, like I said, minor spoiler here, there are aliens in this movie. What do you guys think of the way the aliens look?
I really liked it. It was so disturbing. Amazing you could make something like that at that time. But at this time you can tell it doesn't look just right. But it was just so disturbing when I first watched it. I thought that was
Yeah, it's a very original interpretation of aliens. So there you go, Warren, you got your wish. You're sick of the fucking greys. They don't look grey in this movie.
Yeah, but they're still humanoid. They've got arms and legs. They walk around. That's not what an alien's gonna look like. But seriously, in this film, it's a bit different because, because they're trying to tell a message, So,
right.
But in a sense, I would have myself have preferred the aliens to be a little bit more like a Doctor Who alien in a sense, where, like, for instance, they would just be maybe they'd look like a giant octopus or a big moving lump of jelly or something like this, right? But then what they would do is they'd have a special device that would make them look human, And I think that is the way this alien thing has got to be done more and more in the future. The British are starting to get it, and I really hope the Americans start to get it. The British are starting to get this idea that aliens don't look like humans, So, well, we're working on a premise we know what aliens look like. Okay, so I don't mean it like that. Okay, because,
Warren knows. Warren knows.
So I would have preferred that, but I think no. In this movie, it works really well, and I think they look good because they're still human but different, So no. I think the aliens actually work pretty well, in this context. So I think if you were ever going to remake this movie, I think you would have to change them. I don't think you can make them the same. But for when the movie was made, I think they work pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely a little dated now, but like I said, the whole message of this movie still holds up very much. And you just said it's an extremely current message that it's putting out in this movie. And it's fun. There's action, there's comedy, there's special effects, there's twists. It's got a lot going on for what it is.
Well, a lot of people see huge similarities between this movie and the TV series V. Now, I don't know if we all remember the TV series. Now, it was only recently remade a couple of years ago, but the story of V, which is actually about a different topic.
Right.
V is actually sort of a talk about the Second World War, about occupation, about the resistance movements while a country is occupied, and it also deals with the Holocaust. As well. But so it's dealing with a different subject, when these reptilian aliens come to Earth and so forth. But in this movie, a lot of people see a similarity. Would you see similarities with something like V and this movie, Mike?
Unfortunately, I don't think I've seen V yet.
Okay. And I'm not very well versed in it, but I'll say I know enough to say I think they're the same genre, but they're not the same story. They're both stories where aliens are a part of mainstream human society, but they have an ulterior motive. I'll say that much. So I think they both have that kind of genre, that theme going for them, but I think the way they both tell the stories are very different. Whereas the aliens in They Live, only a select few people know the aliens are around, whereas in V, people know where aliens are around, and they think the aliens are their friends.
Yes.
So kind of like... So definitely the same theme, but definitely the stories are told in very different ways. But it's interesting that you mentioned some of the stuff that V references, because I mean, this movie also references things such as an upcoming apocalypse, World War III. So I mean, like, even those social issues are in this movie and They Live. So I mean, it's just, if you're into social commentary, if you're against the government, not a full-on vigilante or anything, but if you're a thinking man's person, if you like to question authority, this is definitely a movie you want to add to your roster and have it in the back of your mind. I even love what they did with the human law enforcement in this, because in the movie, Roddy Piper's character becomes a hunted man because he can see, he knows the truth. He knows that these aliens are around and have an ulterior motive. And so the way they convince the human law enforcement to, go after him and the group of people that he gets in with that are basically, this I guess counter, what am I trying to say? A group that's going against something.
Resistance group.
Resistance, thank you. Resistance group. The way they convince human law enforcement to chase down this resistance group is the human law enforcement are told, these are communists, these are terrorists.
Well, this brings up, and that's an interesting point. Really makes it poignant today, doesn't it? But it brings up a very interesting point, and that is that these aliens are sort of meant to be the super capitalists of the universe, who, and I think there's even the concept in the movie where they sort of say Earth is the third world. They treat Earth the way that we treat Africa, and so it's so that was interesting. But then one of the problems with that is that this movie is 1988.
Yes.
Right? So the problem is we've still got the Cold War.
Right.
The Soviet Union still exists.
Right.
And so when they're talking about the world, they're taking over the world. Well, hang on. Half the world was the Second World, right? So if you think 1988, there were supposedly what was then called three worlds. You had the First World, which was the Western democracies, the Second World, which was the communist countries, and the Third World were the countries in utter poverty. So the idea is the Second World was huge, back then. And so, well, they're communist, so they're obviously not the uber capitalists. So these aliens obviously haven't infiltrated Russia or East Germany or Poland or Vietnam or China. China, the most populous country in the world. They're not in China. So obviously, so one of the issues I sort of had is it played on that old thing, which I suppose, because I'm not an American, it's a bit of a bugbear for me, is that the world isn't the United States. The world is bigger than the United States.
It is?
And that's one thing I've got to admit that was the little thing I was a little bit disappointed with it, because it's in so many American movies, this assumption that the world is just American, and
I get that,
and it's not.
Yeah, I totally feel you, because there's even a scene where Roddy Piper says, "I believe in America," and I was like, that's kind of a weird line that just seems to come out of nowhere in this movie, and that's just the mentality of patriotism at that time. I mean, America's still a very patriotic country, but I feel like the 80s was like when we were like, Star Spangled Everything. Like, it just, people were so beyond patriotic, and it seemed to like shine through in the most random moments in every film and TV show that you watched. And this movie is an example of that. Like, just randomly, Roddy Piper has to say, "I believe in America," and I'm kind of like, but this is about the world. These aliens are, taking over the world. Why are you just, I feel you. I mean, I'm American and I feel you. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
No, exactly. As a Canadian, I mean, that's another pet peeve that we have. Like, the Americans kind of tend to see themselves as the center of the planet. And, it's not true. I mean, there's other countries here that exist. So.
Well, it's like the classic line. We may have mentioned it on this show before. I don't know, but it's that classic line that Americans, unfortunately, and God bless you all, I love you all, I really do. But the line from the movie Independence Day,
Oh, here we go.
And it's like, and people and Americans cannot, for some reason, understand how fucking offensive this line is to the rest of the world. When he stands up and says, "From now on, the world will celebrate the 4th of July." I mean, sometimes I just don't. So sometimes people can become so insular in their own culture that they forget that they're actually showing this to everybody else. It's not a way to win friends and influence people. It's really not.
I totally feel you.
Yeah.
There's a scene that surprised me in this movie because it is very, United States centric, as I like to say. That's my favorite little suffix to add the word centric, is just take whatever heterocentric, female centric. This one's very U.S. centric. But I thought it was funny that there's a scene in the movie where, Keith David and Roddy Piper have kind of infiltrated the whole, headquarters of the aliens. Like I said, minor spoilers. And I thought it was funny that there were signs all over the place that had bilingual instructions in English and alien language.
Yes.
Did you guys catch that? Did you guys see that? I was like, well, there we go. But I thought, well, that's odd. So aliens are going to come to this planet and not speak English? No, but all joking aside, I thought that was a strange little thing that they threw in there in case, your English is a little rusty or you're learning alien. They had some, bilingual signs to help you on your way.
Well, have you also noticed that all the security personnel that the aliens have are the worst security people in the world? Not only do they allow these two to enter their secret hideout, they also, once they're there, these guys with zero military or police training are able to run around and kill everybody and not get a scratch. But then again, that's kind of 1980s, isn't it?
Right.
That's kind of 1980s. But I just wanted to quickly get back to your point, Velvet, about when he sort of says, I believe in America. And I think there's actually a very good reason why he says that. It's actually got nothing to do with nationalism and stuff like that. It's actually him about sort of saying, I believe in the system. If I work hard, the system will repay me.
Okay,
but what the movie is actually trying to say, no, it won't.
The system is rigged, and you're not playing the game.
I hate to use the word rigged. I really do. But the movie is basically saying that unless it's not rigged, I'm never going to use it. It's like the word fate. I refuse to use the word fake anymore because it doesn't mean what it used to mean. Right. But but that idea that you've got to be in the elite crowd if you really want to succeed. You can't just you can't just be a nobody, go to work, get a paycheck, and be really successful. It doesn't work like that. But it's that dream, and I was going to say American dream, but I'll almost say capitalist dream that if you work hard, you'll be rewarded. Well, no, life doesn't work that way. And I think that's the idea. He goes in with this idea of, I can have it all if I just work hard. And you notice his friend sort of says, no, that's wrong. The only way to succeed is that I've got to beat you. Did you notice that? Like he said, the only way for me to be successful is for you to fail.
Right.
Where Roddy Piper is basically saying we can all be successful if we just work hard. And Keith David is saying, no, only one of us can be successful because there can only be one winner and one loser.
How you like them apples?
I don't know. That's just my thought on what he was saying. That's all. No,
I totally see that. Yeah, there's, like I said, if you take this movie at face value, you're like, oh, it's just an alien movie. But there is so much going on in social commentary and I love it. I'm glad that I saw this again as an adult. Because like I said, as a kid, I was just kind of like, ooh, Roddy Piper's in it and aliens. Like, I was too young to get all the social commentary, all the overtones that are in this. And as an adult, I see it totally different, and I still love it. So, fun movie.
I think this movie, regardless of whatever happens in your particular country at whatever particular time, you'll still find a message in this film.
Yeah.
Because this is a message which is not really... I was going to say there's something very. No, I'm not going to say. No. Let's move on. I was going to go down a path, and I'm not going to go down there.
It's okay. No, I mean, this film can definitely stir up a lot of emotions in people, whether you believe in the system, if you think the system's rigged, whether you think things are not face value, whether you think you can get ahead by hard work or not. I mean, this movie stirs up a lot of those questions. So, I mean, it could definitely lead to a couple of fist fight debates, and we don't want to have those on this show. So, but yeah, I'm glad this movie enlisted that kind of reaction in you. Any final words you'd like to offer on this movie, Mike, that we didn't touch on?
Well, one thing is I'd like to revisit the meaning of the film. Like I kind of indicated what I thought, like what the message was for me, but I didn't really get what you two saw.
Well, good. Yeah, definitely. We want to hear your take on it. Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Please.
Or what I meant is I'd like to understand what you see as the main message that the film's portraying.
Oh, you know what? Honestly, I think I'm actually going to kind of side with you on this, Mike. And I'm actually going to say things aren't what they seem. Don't take things at face value. Ask questions. Definitely is how I see this movie, to be honest. I mean, although there is a lot of social commentary and political overtones, really, I mean, for me, it's do question. Don't just, take things just because somebody tells you, or, don't just obey authority just because you're supposed to. Definitely ask questions. Don't assume everything is what it seems.
Yeah, that's interesting because I see it as a statement of imperialism, which is I see this in the same way as the let's say the British colonization of Australia or of the United States or of Canada. Or French colonization of Canada or Belgian colonization of the Congo. It's that idea that a group comes into another society, runs that society, but still interblends with that society. But you, as part of that society, the one that's been conquered, don't really know you've been conquered because this is your life. You have a choice to either you can sell out to them and work with them and try to be successful, or if you don't, you will be poor forever. That's definitely in this movie too. Excuse me.
Yeah, that's definitely in this movie too. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Then the difference there would be then that in other instances of imperialization or conquest, that you can see who the conquerors are. In this case, initially at least, you don't realize. You just think that they're regular people. They're just
interesting.
Successful.
And in this movie, they actually even refer to a human power elite, which is basically what the aliens call the humans that are a part of the in crowd. So,
yes,
this movie, as you can see, it could really spark some debate and discussion with everything that's in it. So, don't be turned off by it's an '80s alien movie. It's so much more.
In fact, you know how we've often talked about what films you would like to see remade today if they were going to remake a film. I have to admit, this is a film I would like to see remade.
I could see that, just to update it a little bit, because like I said, like here, there's obviously fear of communism, which was part of the Cold War mentality of the '80s. Obviously, just the fashion choices, the technology, because now the power elite, everybody's going to have a fucking cell phone. Just stuff like that more people would be able to relate to today, I think.
Well, I just think that this is a message which is timeless, and so I really think that today, you could remake this film with a big budget. You could, really get those special effects working and stuff, which this film does need. This is in a special effects movie, So I actually think that, I know we often say that don't remake movies. Please don't remake movies. Just leave the original piece of art as it is. But in this case, I think this is a story that could be retold.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I don't feel this movie needs to be remade, but if they were going to remake a movie, this would be a good candidate just because of the message that it has.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So I agree. I would like to see a remake, but the worry I would have is that they use it as some kind of a propaganda vehicle.
Ooh,
that's what I would not.
That's a valid fear. That's a good argument, definitely.
And that would also be really sad, because then it would actually be a contradiction of what the movie is about.
Isn't that
to a
the
degree,
truth?
you know,
Totally.
you know,
Totally.
you'd be selling propaganda to talk about propaganda. It'd be a really interesting concept.
Wow.
You know?
So, but I mean, look at that. Look how strong film is. If this story fell in the wrong hands, the wrong director, if this became a taxpayer-funded film sponsored by the United States government, it would not be a sex film. I just have to say.
Yes, no, look, it is. Look, I mean, I think it's great. I would have loved to have seen John Carpenter have a slightly bigger budget when he made this, because I think it could have been a lot more. You know, I think sometimes it's sort of viewed a bit too much of a bit of a B grader when I think it's actually so much more than that. You know, it really is. I mean, did you even see similarities in this to, let's say, The Running Man?
I feel, for me, they're different enough. Although it's obviously still the power elite and the poor man. For me, these stories are still different enough. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, there's definitely similarities. Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought of that.
That's what I was like. I'm like, oh, Warren, you're so smart.
You have the huge lower class, and they're just eking out an existence, and they have to deal with these nasty elites. It's similar. Yeah,
that's a movie I haven't seen in many years, but I'd love to actually sit down and watch The Running Man again. Yeah, it's that. Well, mind you, I just love a good Arnie film, to be honest. I know
we haven't reviewed any of Schwarzenegger's films on here, actually.
We haven't.
We'll have to do that. Yeah, we'll have to do one.
I mean, some of them are appalling, I have to admit, but some of them are actually really fun, you know. And it's a bit like we were talking about with Pacific Banana. There's nothing wrong with just fun for fun's sake, you know. Not everything has to have an amazing message, you know. Sometimes it is okay just to have fun for fun's sake, you know.
I totally agree. I mean, film does not always have to have a message. It can just be pure entertainment.
But it still needs, when it needs to have a message, it needs to be allowed to have a message. And I just want to say this. If I hear one more person get onto a fucking cable news show and say that actors should just act and shut up,
oh, wow,
I'm going to scream, because acting and movie making is about art. So, of course, they're going to talk and have opinions. And if I hear one more political fucking analyst say that actors should just shut up, I'm going to do my nut, you know.
Uh-oh. Warren's coming for you guys. Warren's coming for you guys.
I heard, I was watching, you know, Bill Maher's show, and I was watching, and they had Piers Morgan on, and he was saying, why can't actors just act and shut up? And I thought, how ignorant is that?
Oh, goodness.
You know, how ignorant is that? You know? But
well,
anyway.
why can't Piers Morgan just shut the fuck up and do his show?
I don't know. I don't watch Piers Morgan. I don't even know what his show's about.
For anybody that's a Piers Morgan fan, I don't know about the situation to comment. I'm just commenting to be funny.
I've got nothing.
But seriously, that comment goes both ways. You know, that's like whenever somebody bumps into you on the street and they tell you to look where you're going, I'm like, but you ran into me.
Oh, I know.
To me, that's what his comment's like. I'm like, well, you're having an opinion now when aren't you just supposed to be a show host or whatever the fuck it is you do? I'm like,
that's both ways. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I've got nothing for him. I've got nothing against him. In fact, up until 12 months ago, I didn't even know who the guy was. But it's like, I just find those comments so ignorant. You know, everybody in the world is allowed a voice. You know, that's the whole point. Everyone's allowed a voice. You know, and
the thing is though, like not everyone is allowed to voice, like get exposure. Whereas someone who's a celebrity, they're allowed that platform to put out their message. But I
Right.
agree with you. People should be allowed to say what they want to say. I agree with that.
Right. Well, that's
Although-
the beauty of social media now is everybody can have a voice. And sometimes it's not always the voice we want to hear, but I mean, social media has really made that possible for anybody. How you decide to voice your opinions, if you voice your opinions, that's up to you. If we decide to listen, that's up to us as well. So.
Well, I mean, there's an ancient human tradition of that. I mean, if we go back to ancient Rome, the idea of standing in the square and voicing your opinion. There was it was done. I mean, it's tradition all through,
Right.
through Britain. I mean, that's the whole concept of the soapbox.
Yes.
That's why we call
Right.
it a soapbox. You go and
Right.
you stand on your box and you voice your opinion on the corner of the street. And it's a tradition that we, dates back 2,000-3,000 years that we know of, probably even longer, so, it's a tradition that's there. And I suppose in a sense with modern society, we've lost that, because we live in such huge societies now. But the concept is social media has brought that back.
Right.
That you can now stand on the street corner. You just do it via your telephone, but you can stand on the street corner again.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and
Definitely.
it's giving the voice, I suppose, back to the people. Whether that's, I don't know. I mean, the whole point is that Kim Kardashian can say something, and and what 3 million people, will comment on it. If you or I say something, it's not going to have quite the same impact.
Isn't it nice to have your privacy? I enjoy not having that kind of attention, I must admit.
It's I don't know. It's up to the individual though, isn't it?
Right.
And that's the thing. I think as long as everybody is guaranteed the right to be able to have and to voice that opinion, that's great. Although I still think, and this is where I get into shaky grounds, because I still think there are limits. I mean, it's the idea of free speech, but should all types of free speech be allowed?
And that will always be up for discussion.
Always
be up
for
discussion. Unless they pass certain laws, which we've seen societies do, that say you can't say whatever you want. So, for now, it's still up for discussion in the United States, and in every country it's a different story, so...
And are you still there, Velvet, or are you... Have we lost you?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me, or have I gone silent?
Oh no, you're inside a washing machine at the moment. I'm not too sure what's happened. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll score this movie. Just one sec. And we're back. Yes, I think I can hear you now, Velvet.
I'm done doing my laundry.
I was about to say, you've climbed out of the washing machine.
It's been hung to dry. You should be able to hear me now.
So, but anyway, we were getting way off topic. They live,
as you can see, this is a movie that incites a lot of discussion. It really gets you thinking. So you can either just sit down and enjoy it as a movie, or if you're an analytical type, you might get a lot more out of this than you bargained for.
I've got a feeling there'll be a few people, if they haven't seen this, are going to watch it. And if they're with a group of people, they're going to start talking about it, I think. It's one of those...
Totally. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that's going to create discussion afterwards.
Yes.
For a lot of people. For other people, they're just going to say, cool alien film.
Right.
So, all right. Any final words, anyway, before we score it? From anyone?
I'd just like to say something going back to the messages that you're seeing, like obey and whatnot. I love that because it's showing the propaganda that we're bombarded with.
Mm-hmm.
So I also like that theme. That's all I want to add.
Yeah, I really love the way they do it too. It's very simply displayed in the film, and it just, it's when you first see that reveal, when he first starts seeing the truth in the movie, you're just like, whoa.
Well, the other thing too is I just suddenly thought, and I don't know if I'm maybe way off track with this, but when it goes into black and white, when he puts the glasses on and he sees all the signs, did that almost give you a sense of a very 1930s feel, or was that just me?
It reminds me of when people had a very regulated lifestyle. I totally feel what you're saying. Like, it makes me think of factory workers. Everybody's on the assembly line. They have a very regimented way of living. You have 8 hours to play, 8 hours to sleep, 8 hours to spend time with your family and go to church. Like, very regimented. Like, it's just very clean cut, very, like, organized. I get that feeling.
It gave me, it was almost like, like Metropolis.
I was going to say that.
So you saw that as well in there.
Say that, yes, I agree, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's great visuals. This movie, I mean, what's really should be so simple, but there's something there. It's not just black and white signs. There's definitely something there with that design. It was not the black and white when he's walking down the street and you see all the people, and the aliens. It was that concept when you look down the view of the city and what you see. Mm-hmm. I actually found that actually kind of a frightening shot. Yeah.
It was actually quite scary.
And he was being woken up, like he sees the truth now, and the truth in the movie is scary. Not scary from like horror, blood and guts point of view, but from a psychological, societal point of view, that's a scary reality. Like, oh shit, is this how it really is? For him, it was in that movie. Yeah.
So, any final words?
I'm going to stop, or we will be here like El Topo. We will be here for a week discussing this movie.
Mike,
I'll go ahead.
Mike, I was going to say, Mike, anything else you wanted to sort of mention about They Live?
No, I'll just leave it at that.
But you asked really good questions, Mike. Okay, so I'll go ahead and throw my rating out. As you can see, this movie, it's so much more than just an action alien film, and it could have been just an action alien film. I mean, there's even a 5-minute fight scene, and they really took it to a whole other level, and it has a message that still holds up today. It's almost a universal message. So definitely a cult film classic. It's spawned many one-liners that you recognize even if you've never seen the movie. So out of a possible 5 Eric Roberts, I'm going to give this a very high 4.5 Eric Roberts.
Excellent. What about you, Mike?
I'm going to go 4.75. I just absolutely love this film.
Nice.
And I'm going to go 4.5.
Excellent.
Because, I there's so much to like about this. It's and the only thing that lets down that, 0.5 is just a few extra dollars, and I reckon this movie could have been a 5. I mean, quite seriously, I reckon it is actually that good. When it starts, I thought it was going to. You get that feeling you're going to see a cheesy B-grade movie, but once it starts, that's not what this thing is. You know, and so that's why I would definitely say, 4.5. It's a great one. It's a great one. All right. Well, I reckon that is pretty much a wrap for this show. We want to thank Mike for coming on, and it's great also getting different ideas and interpretations, about films. So thank you so much for that. That's that was really good.
Exactly, because you're a man of few words, but when you speak up, we always got a lot out of what you said. Very thought-provoking comments and questions, Mike.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, no, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I have to say, you actually mentioned a couple of things about some of those movies, and I sort of thought, I never thought of that.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was wow. So that was actually I really enjoyed that. So basically, look, I'll let you take yourself, Velvet. You're always great with the
okay, cool.
Because you remember everything.
All right. Well, first off, Mike, do you have any social media or any projects, websites, phone numbers, addresses, anything you want to shout out? Go for it.
Well, I wonder if people might want to check out another film I'm working on. It's a documentary. The address is psychopathytheory.com. So it's kind of relating a little bit to what I see as the message in this film, as dealing with what kind of people are running things. So, yeah.
Wow. That sounds actually pretty amazing. Okay, so that's psychopathytheory.com?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to check that out because I'm into, abnormal psychology and serial killers, and something called psychopathytheory.com is definitely something I need to check out, especially if it's a documentary that you're making. I'm definitely going to check that out. So everybody head on over to psychopathy theory. Sorry, I keep wanting to say therapy. Excuse me. Psychopathytheory.com. I think that's what I need after the show. All right. So, and do you have any social media that you want to shout out that you want people to follow you on?
Just my Twitter is Mike. What is it again?
It's there's no dot. Well, we'll tag you through the week, and people will be able to follow you through that. So, because I don't know it off the top of my head, but I know it's different. But we'll get you shouted out. We'll get you taken care of.
Most definitely.
Right. All right, for the rest of us. Okay, so if you want to learn more about me, you can follow me on my social media on Twitter and Instagram at OMG, it's Velvet. But I do post adult content, so please be 18 years or older. You can follow my awesome Aussie co-host, Warren, on his social media at Martini Super Dry, because that's how he drinks it. Okay, Martini Super Dry. But Cult Movie Show, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Cult Movie Show. Feel free to tweet us. You can or private message us your movie request. If you have a short film you'd like us to review, go ahead and contact us. You can also email us, cultmovieshow@gmail.com. And you can listen to the show on iTunes as well as on YouTube. So, and I think that's it. Did I forget anything, Warren?
I think that's everything. I want to give a shout out to the guys at Only Funny to Us.
Awesome.
They often give us a bit of a hand with stuff. And so that's OFTU Podcast on Twitter. So I think that's right. So you can go and check them out there. They do a funny show. They do a funny show. So check that out. I think that's a lot.
All right. Excellent. Thank you again, Mike, for being our guest and offering your insight, and good luck with your short film, your documentary. We look forward to checking it out and having you on again sometime.
Thank you very much.
No worries. All right. Well, that's a wrap for podcast 33. I got it right. And we will be back next week with some other pretty cool films. So until then, we will leave you, as always, with Alana Evans and Perfect.